Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by author Jiao Chao. Chapter 941-960. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And those who want to support me, I have a Patreon channel, get early access to video on Patreon. 941 The Wild Wolf gets Ridge free. The orbital bombardment, which lasted for 24 hours, turned the land around Tizca into an inferno, and the land scoured by phosphite bombs was barren. After the bombing ended, Tizca stood firm, like an isolated island in a sea of ashes, protected by a gleaming shield. The majestic marble walls remained undamaged, and the magnificent pyramid-shaped tower floated in the air, surrounded by soaring tower buildings. The bombing was not yet completely over when dark, iron-gray clouds pressed down on Tizca. As the dark clouds drew closer, its true form was gradually revealed. Large numbers of gunboats, assault boats, and troop transports led the way, followed closely by heavy transport ships carrying armored troops and artillery. 300 Socalan-type Stormbirds led the charge, skimming the burning sea surface as they stormed toward the northeast of Tizca. The Stormbirds swarmed into port facilities along the western border that separates the city from the Sea of Walpuri. A gray, Socalan-shaped Stormbird flew into the harbor, its fierce head painted with a double wolf emblem. Several missiles roared into the air and struck the fishing boats that had set out to hunt at night. Boom boom boom. Fishing boats laden with their catch were blasted into shards and scattered across the mudflats. The cannons swept across, blasting the fishermen into a bloody mist. The landing gear slammed down, and the Stormbird crashed to the ground the instant it landed. Giants clad in wolf skins leapt out from among them. Leman Russ was the first invader to set foot on Prospero. He roared to the sky, while Frecky and Jerry howled loudly on either side. Dozens of Socalan Stormbirds swooped toward the Wolf King's berth, their missiles streaking with fire as they struck the fuel tower and storage bins. The iron-gray Thunderhawks and troop transports descended rapidly, crushing the marble seawall and spewing out 30,000 Space Wolves assault troops. As soon as they stepped off the deck, following Space Wolves' usual tactics, they dispersed into dozens of hunting groups and launched an attack on the old town of Tizca, which stood against the White Mountains. The towering flames reflected on the iron-gray armor as Space Wolves traversed the sea of fire. The well-trained militia of Tizca concentrated their firepower, unleashing a barrage of beams at the invaders. Crackling sound. The beam of light precisely pierced through several pairs of eyepieces, knocking down the wolf intruder. The Grey Hunter, wearing a wolf bone helmet, started the motor and raised his chainsaw sword with a roar. With a snarling roar, the Grey Hunters crashed into the militia lines. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, covering the iron-gray armor. Bang, bang, bang. The Grey Hunters' boots crushed the corpses and rushed into the labyrinth of jade buildings. On the rooftop of the Nefret District Library, Cardinal Fee of the Paladin Guards shouted into the comms channel, "Guards, focus fire. Kill the brutal invaders." The Paladin were from the ancient Tizca dynasty, whose guards had protected the palace for generations. The young commander is the heir to the oldest family in the Prospero clan. Like his ancestors, he leads his warriors to defend their homeland. The defensive line built by a Fee, Cafilacho, is located on the edge of the port and is the first line of defense in the old town. The Paladin Guards' cannons roared in unison, whistling as they flew towards the iron-gray waves. Boom boom boom. The shell tore through the iron-gray armor, blasting several wolves into the sky. The 4 hunting packs in the front shouted in unison and crashed into the trenches at the foot of the mountain. The bombs exploded, blasting the Paladin Guards into plumes of bloody mist. The Frostblade battle axe whirled, severing the bodies and lifelines of mortals. The wolves howled as they leapt out of the trenches strewn with corpses. The second round of shelling, accompanied by layers of fire from the mountainside, rained down on the frenzied wolf pack like hail. The laser beam ionized the air with a crackling sound, struck the iron-gray armor, and was immediately deflected, leaving only charred marks on it. The roaring cannonballs slammed into their heads and faces, smashing onto their helmets and blasting the wolf bones and helmet rims into fireballs. 5 wolves fell before the second trench. A dozen or so gray swarms galloped and leapt, crashing into the trenches. Bang bang bang. The Paladin Guard was crushed by the boots, and sticky flesh and blood clung tightly to the wolf's boot soles like a membrane. As the wolves leapt up again, heads down and rushing forward, flesh and blood ripped from the iron-gray armor. A foul stench accompanied a terrible roar as iron-gray waves crashed against the Paladin Guard's lines. From the rooftop of the Nefret District Library, a Fee gazes out over the battlefield. The Paladin Guards did not back down in the face of Astartes. They steadfastly executed their rolling defensive tactics despite the wolves' brutal attacks. But the wolf, now out of its reins, was far more ferocious than he had anticipated. 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. The wolf pack's vanguard pierced through the trenches and lines of defense of Chao. As Afi watched the wolves break into his home, he bit his lips tightly, and blood dripped down like beads. The pain brought him back to his senses. He gazed at the winding jade streets and turned on the communication channel again. Retreat into the city. Rely on every park, every theater, every market, and every restaurant to continue the resistance. Quote, "We are the Paladin Guardians, and we will live and die with this city. The Paladin will stand until the wolves kill us all." The radio channels crackled with shouts, "Paladin stands firm." Ruth strode across the blood-soaked white jade street, turned on his communicator, and issued orders. His icy blue eyes swept over the enemy who had slipped into the street corner and hidden in the maze of jade buildings. Ruth knew he could not give the Thousand Sons time to build their bizarre and wonderful sorcery traps, or the wolves would struggle in the quagmire of sorcery. He must use Fenris-esque savagery to quickly demoralize the defenders. Release blood claws and pursue the defeated enemy. Grey Hunters, keep pushing. Target, Magna Acropolis. The reins on the bloodthirsty recruits of the wolf pack were released, and the blood claws formed hunting packs of hundreds, each led by a veteran Grey Hunter. The blood claws recruits, their faces contorted in a grotesque and terrifying grin, roared as they swung their chainsaws and axes into the magnificent columned square. The beam of light hissed as it struck his iron-gray armor, and he crashed straight into the stone pillar. Boom! The stone pillar collapsed, smashing the paladin guards into a muddy mess. Blood Claws rolled its blood-yellow eyes and strode toward the panicked civilians. The motor roared and the axe blades whirled, slicing dozens of civilians to pieces, their flesh and blood splattering everywhere. A waterfall of blood splattered against Blood Claw's goggles, the stench of blood seeping into his enhanced nostrils through the breathing grill. Blood Claws licked his lips, turned his body, and fixed his blood-yellow eyes on the fleeing civilians in the square. The tactical interface scrolled with low-threat rune prompts. Blood Claws roared and charged straight at the civilians. Bang! Blood Claws was thrown into the air. Greyhound punched him on the shoulder. Damn it. Our target is Tizca's guards, don't waste time on those civilians. Inside the Bright Feather Tower, Hather Matt, the think tank director of Thousand Sons, examines communications information. The wolf pack broke through the Paladin Guards' lines in 2 minutes, and their slaughter of survivors in the streets continued for 15 minutes. It took the wolf pack 17 minutes to break through the Old Town and reach the banks of the River Lessem, which separates the Old Town from the Magna Acropolis. His gaze lingered on the crimson message flashing incessantly in the mouth. Leman Ruth steps into the battlefield for the first time. He launched an assault on the fortress gates of the Magna Acropolis. Hather took a deep breath and turned his gaze to the 30 black armored warriors lined up in front of him. I need your help now, the goal has been sent to you. Lord Hather, we will carry out your orders, the Shadow of Order lieutenant replied loudly, pounding his chest with his right fist. Hather has a secret order from Jean Father, and they must carry out Hather's orders. Greater than 942 I've come to save you on Lord Nimrod's order. Inside the Phoenix Golden Tower, Grand Master of the Temple Caliphus sat high on the crystal throne. Any member outside the Fire Phoenix cult who enters the Fire Phoenix Temple will be unable to withstand the raging flames. The ethereal sprites soared and swirled, their illusory bodies leaving trails of shimmering light. Seota of Caliphus hovered above Caliphus's head like a dazzling angel, his form continuously expanding since the bombing began. Nourished by the flames of the entire planet, he has grown as majestic as the Primarch. 1,000 fire phoenixes surrounded Caliphus, standing within the sacred six-pointed star where water and fire intertwine, holding the psychic crystal of the reflecting caves in their hands. My lord, are you sure you want to use this dangerous ritual? Caliphus's fingers crackled as they rested on the ruby armrest, sparks leaping and flashing as they hurtled past the psychic crystals. I have never been so certain that I am the Grand Master of the Temple of Fire Phoenix School. Flames are my servants, I am the Lord of Hellfire, and today, I will incinerate the wolves. Let's begin. Ferris stepped back, and the fire phoenixes were about to burn their life force, unleashing the violent power of the psychic crystal. Caliphus's burning eyes looked out of the temple. Hathor, what business do you have in my temple if you don't command and direct your troops? I'll save your life, Hather Matt said, raising his hand to push the large door aside. His eyes rapidly dimmed, then his pupils narrowed, and an invisible wave of spiritual energy surged forward. The dragon's might surged forth, and the 1,000 sons of fire phoenixes trembled as if they had been struck by a giant hammer. Several thousand sons of fire phoenixes left their positions on the sacred hexagram and began to circle around it. Ferris and the remaining 1,000 sons stood frozen in place, their bodies trembling. Hather, what are you doing? Caliphus roared, unleashing a torrent of blazing fire that surged forth like a fire dragon, hurtling towards Caliphus and the Order Shadow beside him. The Grand Master of the Temple of the Bright Feather School suddenly raised his hand as large as a marble statue. Lightning shot out. Amid a series of rapid explosions, the flames were sliced in two. I have come to save you on Lord Nimrod's orders. Psionic Drake, who was huddled behind the throne, trembled slightly, and a dark mist appeared in his eyes. As Cioda growled, Caliphus was about to release her mind and merge with him when she suddenly stopped. Lord Nimrod. Now, Hather shouted. Golden light surged from the obsidian-like eyes of the man beside him, and he shouted in the Dun language, Notary, summon the holy light. The golden rays grew increasingly pure, eventually evolving into a stamp-like projection, imprinted on, Notary. A holy, clear light descended from the sky and struck Cioda, who was inside the firework barrier. Bang! Like a balloon bursting, the angel's body rapidly shrank. Roar! Cioda roared angrily, raising his hands. Seeing this, Order Shadow suddenly pulled a glass grenade from his waist and threw it at Cioda. The gleaming glass grenade slammed into the infernal body with a bang. Amidst the shattered, crystalline fragments, the warp brainworm opens its mouth, revealing a dazzling array of sharp teeth. Ah! Cioda let out a shrill cry and exploded with a bang, scattering sparks everywhere. Hathor, are you insane? Caliphus suddenly stood up from the crystal throne. Even he, if he wanted to summon a powerful guardian spirit like Cioda, would need to set up a psionic array and perform a series of summoning rituals. Wild wolves are rampant, I need Cioda's power. You're courting death. Hather spread his spirituality, soothing Caliphus in the tone of a psychiatrist. Quote, come with me, and I'll show you. The flames in Caliphus's eyes flickered and died repeatedly as he exhaled Mars. I hope what you show me is enough to prove that there are proper reasons for the foolish things you have done. He looked at Ferris, who had regained his mobility and was walking on flames to his side. Gather all Akia-type fortress robots. 97. At the same moment that Caliphus angrily followed Hather away from the Fire Phoenix Tower, Leman Russ stepped across the burning banks of the River Resham. Heavy artillery along the city wall roared in unison, bombarding the wolf pack that was wading through the water. The river water evaporated, the iron-gray armor shattered, and the torn wolf carcass splattered everywhere. Leman Russ roared as he drew his Mionile. After being defeated twice by Nimrod and having the chainsword, Siren's Bite, forged from the diamond-hard fangs of the Kraken sea monster, and the Frostblade battleaxe, Winter's Fang taken away, he began to use Mionile. This Frostblade, chainsword, also known as the Sword of Night, was forged using Kraken's fangs, but it was not killed by Leman Russ. Mjolnir was forged from the tusks of the legendary sea monster Gordor from the Age of Strife. Winter and the Warlord approached the city walls with heavy steps. The gunners turned their cannons around, bringing Leman Russ and the fleeing civilians into the range of their fire. Boom boom boom. The earthquake trembled, and the bodies of hundreds of civilians exploded. Leman Russ roared and charged forward simultaneously with Freki and Jerry. The two wolf brothers ran and leapt, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, through the smoke of battle, and soared into the air. Freki and Jerry simultaneously leapt onto the city wall, their claws slicing through Mars. They used their sharp claws to propel themselves upwards, beams of light grazing their fur. Freki and Jerry leapt up simultaneously, jumping into the group of gunners. Freki opened his gaping maw and swallowed a gunner whole. Jerry swung his claws and sliced another gunner in half at the waist. Rumble. The entire city wall shook as Miana struck the city door. The great door was instantly frozen by the frost blade, and frost appeared on its surface. The motor roared, and chainsword vibrated incessantly. With each toothed blade rotating forward, the city door trembled. Boom! With a tremendous explosion, the city of Door shattered into tens of thousands of pieces, each fragment glistening with Fenris's frost. The bronze statue of Magnus stands atop the towering cliffs of the Acropolis, gazing upon the Acropolis he designed and built as it engulfed in flames. The wolf pack swarmed into the fortress and launched a merciless massacre of the soldiers and civilians. General Ellen Neali led thousands of civilians to retreat to the White Mountains, while valiant soldiers put up a fierce resistance in North Door. The iron-gray wolf pack sank into the blood-red swamp. 200 soldiers guarded the large door of the armory, their guns firing relentlessly at a barrage of bullets. The first cataphractic Terminator in Dalian was blown away and crashed into the ground, creating large craters. The Terminators scrambled to their feet, raised their heavy bolter rifles, and fired at the armory's great door. Boom boom boom. Explosions roared, and smoke filled the air. The steel fortress that once stood at the armory door was razed to the ground. The cataphractic Terminators marched forward, charging toward the armory door. Dozens of steel fortresses opened fire simultaneously, unleashing a torrent of bullets upon the wolf pack. Bang! A cataphractic terminator collapsed with a thud. The iron-gray waves surged like the tide. The waves kept approaching the great door, but were forced back by the dense barrage of fire, only to surge up again. The back-and-forth struggle lasted for 10 minutes before the first cataphractic terminator broke into the fortress. He swung his chainsaw axe and smashed it against the steel fortress. Boom! Steel fragments flew everywhere. The chainsaw whirled, blood and flesh splattered. Cataphractic terminator, its body covered in flesh and blood, charged toward the great door. Boom! 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 Amid a series of deafening explosions, the armory was blown to pieces. The detonated explosives released a raging torrent that engulfed the iron-gray armor. Several cataphractic terminator near the armory were engulfed in flames. Amidst towering flames, heavy transport ships descended from the sky, crushing the city walls to pieces. They unleashed their thunderous, iron-gray chariots, and predators and protectors crushed the gravel as they passed. The Cyclone missile vehicle roared as it drove off the deck, its square missile bay aiming at the cliff amidst the smoke and dust. Missiles soared into the sky, covering the majestic bronze statue. Leman Russ strode out from the summit of the White Mountain, past the Magna Acropolis burning like a pyre. He looked up and saw the molten storm shattering Magnus's statue into tens of thousands of pieces. The debris crashed into the inner bay of the Primorsky Bay like a mudslide, and was immediately submerged by the waves. Greater than. Chapter 943 Lord Nimrod foresaw that Ciota would burst me. Grand Master of the Temple of Fire Phoenix School, Caliphus's gaze swept over the line of Achaea-type fortress robots. The fortress-type robots of the 1,000 Suns Legion are all manufactured by Jiao Akata, a Forge world allied with. The biggest difference between the Achaea type and other types is that the psionic artisans of the Fire Phoenix School embed psionic resonance crystals in key positions of the energy core and energy channels, and engrave shining Fire Phoenix runes on the steel body. His eyes burned with fury as he looked at Chief Librarian. Hather Matt, where are we going? The 15th Infantry Assault Regiment, commanded by Company Commander Sokum Visara, established a defensive line on the north side, 1 kilometer east of Skamashu. Caliphus raised his hand, about to point towards Visa's lines in the west. But Hather said, I have ordered the activation of Tizca's teleportation. The doors system. We will gain an advantage on local battlefields by relying on them. Caliphus's fiery gaze subsided, and he gave Facus an order. Open teleportation, door. As you command, Your Excellency. Facus strode toward the rotating passageway and descended. Caliphus ascended to the 4th level of Magnus, separating a portion of her consciousness from her mind and sending it flying into bodies composed of flames, psychic crystal, and steel. With a single thought, the hydraulic fiber bundles within the 14 statue-like Achaea-type fortress robots simultaneously trembled, driving their giant piston feet forward. The other Fire Phoenix School members also activated their psionic powers. Most of them could only activate 1 or 2, and the most they could activate were 5. Thump thump thump. Hather followed Caliphus down the spiral passage and turned into the 2nd level. Hather looked out and saw the dazzling doorway, wreathed in flames, wide enough for small armored vehicles to pass through. The recruits, wearing psionic hoods, maintained teleportation under the command of a chaplain. Door. The Legion's servants in the past could undertake teleportation. The main maintenance of the door was carried out, but the father held 2 ceremonies after all the servants had died. Sir, the Critis Gallery has been located, Facus reported. Every teleportation doors are all located inside large buildings, enabling the deployment of the entire squad. Hather nodded and took the lead, walking towards the large door that resembled a curtain of water. Psychic energy surged across his red armor, and a myriad of ethereal tides rippled through it. As the etheric tide receded, Hather surveyed the defense zone. Servitor, carrying paintings and statues, approached the box and placed the artworks preserved by 1,000 Suns across many worlds inside. Hather's marble-like face was somber. Such delicate work of art should not have been done by the clumsy servitor, but now there was no other choice. He walked silently toward the front hall, heavy footsteps echoing behind him. Lord Hather. Visara was dressed in the neat uniform of a Prospero Tower guard, with a gold medal pinned to his chest. His broad shoulders tensed as he bowed to Hather. Hather nodded. Visa, how's the situation? The wolves, fierce offensive once broke through our lines. In the moment of crisis, a squad of 1,000 Suns came to our aid from the Black Crow Tower on the west side. Their help allowed us to hold the line. Hather turned to Caliphus, who had come to his side, and said, the wolves are still charging forward at breakneck speed. It's time to tell them that invading our homeland will come at a price. You will also see the price of using the power of the Guardian Spirit on the battlefield. Lord Caliphus. Visa exclaimed in surprise, not expecting to receive reinforcements from two Grand Masters of the temple. Caliphus nodded slightly, his eyes blazing with fire. I will teach the wolf a lesson. With a thought, 3 human-sized Achaea-type robots from Fortress Star lined up in 2 rows and walked past on either side of the front hall. The guards at the Sharp Tower moved aside in an orderly fashion, watching the enormous robot walk past them. Caliphus was the first to step out of the front hall, gazing at the distant battle lines. 1,000 Suns, branded with a black raven's head in the center of a star-shaped band on his left shoulder armor, stood in front of the mortar position. He brandished his magnificent staff, unleashing a barrage of mortar fire that covered the densest area of wolves. The artillery fire slammed into the center of the frenzied charging pack, and the swift wolves seemed to recklessly stumble into the firing range. Boom boom boom. The iron-gray armor shattered, and a dozen wolves fell. Caliphus strode down the slope, right next to the old town's waterside gardens on either side of the street corner, while 1,000 Suns, the Black Crow, waved his staff. Jiao's Arcada-type plasma gun spewed out dazzling flames, much like his guardian spirit, the dazzling angel Ciota, engulfing the surviving wolves at the edge of the pack. With a deafening roar, the iron-gray steel behemoth smashed through the wall. The heavy bomb roared and slammed into the white jade building on the street corner. The explosion sent flames soaring into the sky, and the 1,000 Sons of the Black Raven School were thrown back, but dozens of Sharp Tower guards were engulfed by the explosion and buried in the rubble. Caliphus's mind raced, and 14 Archaea-type fortress robots lined up on either side. The Baroque-style, heavy punch-shaped explosive cannons above their heads slowly rose. Bang bang bang. The tremor of his heavy body shook the entire slope. The heavy punch-shaped shell, much larger than a heavy bomb, roared as it slammed into the iron-gray steel behemoth, penetrating its armor without hindrance. Boom boom boom. One after another, the iron-gray armored vehicles were thrown dozens of meters into the air and shattered amidst the booming explosions. The rolling wolf exploded in the billowing dust, its charred and mangled body crashing to the ground. One by one, the Achaea-type fortress robots joined the bombardment, and devastating artillery fire covered the entire Wild Wolf armored formation. Lord Caliphus. The Black Raven 1,000 Sons cried out. They waved their staffs, guiding the tower guards to focus fire on the wolves, who had lost the cover of their armored vehicles. Caliphus surveyed the battlefield and shook his head. In etheric sight, the guardian spirit hovers around the Black Crow Angels, helping them to launch precise strikes against the future. The wolf pack's brutal charge, colliding with dense firepower, is like moths drawn to a flame. Hather, what are you showing me? If I could merge with Ciota, I could command 52 Achaea-type fortress robots. No, the current Prospero has such high firepower that I can even control a Warhound Titan. As he pondered, Mathis, a lecturer at the Black Raven School, drew upon the power of the guardian spirit, causing the future in his mind to shine brightly. He felt a burning sensation all over his body, as if Ryan had merged into his body. The obscure scene became clearer, and Mathis trembled slightly as he raised his arm. Disperse your attacks. The plasma beams were dispersed into 2 beams, followed by 3 and 4 beams. Pairs of wolves were engulfed by the scorching beams of light, dying at double the rate. Wild wolves, your end is near. Mathis's words were indistinct, his deformed mouth twisting in the anomaly. He had just realized something was wrong when every organ and limb in his body began to change wildly. Spikes sprouted from his chest, tearing through his red armor. The unbound muscles atrophied, then suddenly burst open again in the next instant. His organic body tissues twisted and intertwined with his inorganic armor, merging into one in a horrifying way. Mathis wanted to stop the premonition, but his body no longer belonged to him. Ryan filled his entire being. The malice has completely unlocked the ferocious potential buried deep within the genetic structure, unleashing the full force of the flesh change accumulated over a century. Mathis let out a terrified scream, and then his body exploded like a supernova. Rumble. Hundreds of tower guards, along with 5 charging wolves, were torn apart by the ferocious force. Caliphus gazed at the leveled street, a chill creeping over his once burning body. Guardian spirit, flesh change. Hather is telling the truth, he saved me, no. Caliphus was pale as psionic Drake landed on his shoulder. He recalled Order Shadow, who was beside Caliphus, unleashing golden flames. They rescued me on Lord Nimrod's orders. Lord Nimrod knew that once I became one with Ciota, I would be burst apart by a terrifying force. A scene suddenly appeared in his mind. Psionic Drake, with his superhuman perception surpassing Astartes, implants a colossal, iron-gray beast into his mind. He raised his right arm, and the spinning missile launcher was aimed at the slope. Caliphus pushed his state of mind to the level he was most adept at, the 8th level of state of mind. Flames surrounded the red armor as psionic drake frantically flapped its wings and took flight. Caliphus raised his right arm, and a wall of blazing fire rose before him. The missile, trailing a fiery tail, crashed into the flame shield with a roar, and was immediately swallowed up by the molten flames like a moth drawn to a flame. Caliphus swung her staff with her left arm, and streams of white flames surged forth, crashing down on Dreadnought. The intense heat of the explosion ignited the cold stone coffin, melting the heavy, iron-gray mech like a candle. 944 I punished the heretics who blasphemed you. Space Wolves, Rune Priest of 5th Great Company Oshel Wardmech's mechanical legs rolled over the rubble as he walked proudly through the ruins. All evil warlocks should be destroyed. Today is Thousand Sons and Prospero. Soon after, it was Order Shadow and Nimrod, and Sanchez. He gripped the golden staff in his hand tightly. Wardmech's cold gaze suddenly shifted, landing on the tactical interface. The streaks of iron-gray runes disappeared rapidly. Hundreds of scarlet runes flashed by, finally transforming into a scarlet number, 425. The Thousand Sons have joined the war. Wardmech thought, the losses of the 5th Great Company in an instant surpassing all the losses suffered by the Wolf Pack after their landing. Such casualties could not possibly have been caused by mortals, it must have been caused by evil witchcraft. As he was thinking, his Wolf Lord suddenly rang through the communication channel. Amlodi Skarsenson's roar. Brothers, all of you, attack. A blizzard of static interference filled the entire communication channel. Wardmech frowned, tilted his head back, and gazed into the distance with his bloodshot eyes. The foul-smelling magical light expanded rapidly like bubbles. Wardmech raised his hand and grasped a wolf tooth amulet on his body, and an ominous magical light swept over his body. Despite the runic protection of the Fenris Forge, he still felt a bitter metallic taste in his throat. Pooh! Wardmech spat. His blood-yellow eyes flashed with a cold light. The inability to coordinate attacks would weaken Ultramarines, Iron Hands, and Iron Warriors, but the Wolf Pack had enough autonomy and experience to fight independently. He looked in the direction where the flames were shooting into the sky and continued walking. Wardmech had only taken 2 steps forward when he suddenly stopped. He turned around abruptly and looked in the direction he had come from. My lord, Bloodclaws asked in confusion. They had been following Rune Priest's orders to tear every sharp tower guard and civilian to pieces. Wherever they went, only burning ruins remained. Rune Priest swung his golden staff violently, and a violent vortex erupted out of nowhere in the ruins. The cyclone spun faster and faster, tearing 5 buildings apart in an instant, with burning debris crackling and popping. Bang bang bang. A dull thud rang out, and the Bloodclaws looked in the direction of the sound. Inside the cyclone, a red-armored warrior was being tossed about wildly, burning rubble splattering onto his armor. Thousand Sons. Wardmech shook his golden staff, and his bone amulet jingled. The cyclone suddenly exploded, and Thousand Sons plummeted straight down, crashing heavily to the ground. With a deafening roar, the armor shattered, and splattered blood. The Bloodclaws bared their fangs and surrounded the Thousand Sons. Thousand Sons suddenly leapt to his feet, and his wounds vanished in an instant. The Bloodclaws writhed and convulsed, their oxygen-rich blood rapidly vaporizing. The flames of burning blood licked at their goggles, and the Bloodclaws collapsed in defeat. Wardmech gazed at the figure clad in armor more magnificent than any of the other Thousand Sons, wielding a gleaming scimitar. Hather Mat. Hather stared intently at Wardmech, the image of the Nikaya amphitheater flashing through his mind. Wardmech has accused Order Shadow and Black Emperor of crimes. Heresy. You are the first prey I hunted, and the best sacrifice I could find. Hather's eyes instantly turned obsidian black. I will, on behalf of my lord, bring down divine punishment. Magnus's brat, when did you become such a weakling who only knows how to chant scriptures? Wardmech said mockingly. Hather chuckled and waved his staff, unleashing a torrent of lightning. Wardmech raised his staff high, and a vortex of energy swirled around him. The gale whipped up hundreds and thousands of broken bricks and stones, forming a thick shield around him. The lightning bolts shot into the storm shield like spears, piercing straight through the rubble and gale. Bang! The lightning spear struck the iron-gray armor, shattering the 2 bone amulets. Wardmech shuddered. He knew that the evil magic wielded by Librarian, the chief of the Thousand Sons, was far more powerful than the storm power he possessed. He pulled out his chainsaw axe and pressed his thumb firmly against the activation rune. Wardmech raised his chainsaw axe high and roared as he charged toward Hather. Hather's eyes flashed, and he waved his staff frequently, casting streaks of lightning. Bang bang bang. One by one, the amulets shattered, scattering fragments that left charred marks on the iron-gray armor. Wardmech lunged at Thousand Sons and swung his chainsaw axe with all his might. Hather's left arm shimmered with illusory dragon scales as he raised his dazzling scimitar to meet the attack. Boom! Amidst the crashing sound, Space Wolves felt a numbness in his arm. The strength of Thousand Suns was far greater than he had anticipated. Witchcraft! Wordmek roared disdainfully as he swung his chainsaw axe down with a howl. A flash of light suddenly shot up, and the curved blade struck Wordmek's chest before it could reach him. Blood spurted out, burning away before it even touched the magnificent armor. Hather looked at the wolf's carcass that had crashed to the ground. How ridiculous. Wild wolf, you don't know that when my lord bestowed upon me the title of hypnotist, my strength and speed were greatly enhanced. You are much weaker than I anticipated. I have not yet used the greater powers bestowed upon me by my lord. As Hather pondered, he plunged his staff and scimitar into the ground. He clasped his hands together upside down and looked up at the sky. My lord, I have punished the heretics who blasphemed you. After silently praying for 11 heartbeats, he released his hands and withdrew his weapon. As Hather took a step forward, a mental pulse pierced through him, and he sensed the presence of Bellic Uthizar, the Grand Master of the Temple of the Sky Owl School, and accepted the mental connection. Dreamwalker guards the secrets of his own heart and the Black Emperor, only revealing a corner of his heart to a limited extent. Hather, your plan is proceeding smoothly. We used teleportation. Door appeared in the building the wolf pack hadn't destroyed, forming an encirclement from their rear and flanks. All the Thousand Suns ascended to a low-level mental state, their reason not taken away by anger. Each time the wolf pack launched a counterattack, we would disappear, and then concentrate our forces to strike the enemy's weak points. I have more good news for you. During a counterattack we launched in the Old City, we discovered that 2 Grey Hunter commanders from different hunting groups had been beheaded. After communicating with all the temple instructors, I confirmed that the attack did not come from anyone. Hather's eyes lit up. The Invisible One of Aemon. Amon's Ninth Society is entirely composed of unseen beings, who are masters of infiltration using psychic magic. Although the Primarch's attendant will not obey anyone other than their father, their addition is undoubtedly a powerful force. More importantly, the entry of the Primarch's attendant into the war may signify a shift in the father's thinking, as he intends to join his sons in avenging the invaders. Uthizar, contact your father. Please ask him to join us. I understand, Uthizar replied. 945 Warmaster's evil plan must fail. Prospero's orbit, with the Imperial Guard commander Constantine Valder gazing at the hologram. The scan results provided by Roche Matrix are inconsistent in brightness, with runes flashing. The data on the etheric reading device was climbing rapidly, and the Thousand Suns used witchcraft to disrupt the entire battlefield. Almost imperceptible red runes kept appearing on the flanks and rear of the wolf pack. Sir, the communications supervisor's voice trembled. The communication array is running at full power, but it still cannot reconnect with Lord Lehman Russ. Keep trying. Vol stared at the iron-gray armored forces, stuck in a quagmire. Despite the highest commander of the punishment fleet, Lehman Russ did not want them to interfere in the civil war between the Astartes legions, believing he had no right to judge. Primarch and Astartes ordered him to remain on track. But he holds the Emperor's own judicial seal, the seal of supreme authority for instruction, a sacred duty bestowed upon him by the sovereign, above all commands. Vol was accompanied by Commander Crow, one of the Sisters of Silence's Vigil, and the Third Terra. Auxilia and the 8th Throne World rotating garrison forces, as well as the Lien Outer Legion, issued orders. Launch a surprise attack on the orbital transfer station and launch a full-scale attack. He did not provide direct support to the Wolf Pack to avoid highlighting the Alpha Wolf's offensive setback and thus angering Primarch. Third Terra at the same moment that Auxilia's Swordtail interceptors and the Imperial Guard's Dawn and Dusk interceptors swept away several lightning fighters, Boros Kun, the commander of the Sons of Horus, led 5,000 warriors and Auxilia to land in the pacified old town north of Tizca. He issued the order over the high-frequency communication channel: execute Warmaster's order, establish a containment zone, and expel the refugees. Kun immediately led his guards to scan the Roche Matrix, revealing the area with the highest concentration of life signals. He strode across the street corner and immediately spotted his first target, a woman pulling at a boy. He turned on the transcriber, and the local low Gothic music started playing. Tizca people, stop immediately. By order of the Warmaster appointed by the Emperor of Mankind, you will be properly contained and housed. The woman turned her head and looked over, only to find that it wasn't the familiar Thousand Suns red armor. She immediately grabbed her 2 children and ran quickly toward the wrecked fish shop. The woman crashed into Kun's armor. Kun reached out and snatched the child from her hands, his 2 pairs of fingers tightening. Bang! Bang! Like a watermelon bursting open, the sticky fluid from the boy and girl splattered onto Mother's face. Ah! The The woman let out a piercing scream, her mind, bound by years of Tai Chi practice, shattered. The streets were covered in frost, and the screams sounded like thousands of steel needles being pierced into Kun's head. Her fingernails grew long and gleamed with a dark luster. "Give it back to me, give my child back to me." The mangled corpse crashed onto Mother, silencing her screams. Her venomous eyes filled with tears as she held her child tightly. Kun drew his power sword, but instead of activating the disruption field, he unleashed a series of slashes, dismembering Mother into several pieces. He waved his hand and said, "Hang them at the highest point so that any resident can see the price of resistance." The servitor began to move, dragging away the corpse. Tizca residents were herded into the containment area like livestock. Those who resisted were dismembered and their remains hung up as warning signs. The screams of death echoed, and the old town grew even darker. In the streets and alleys, shadowy figures, with slow, dragging steps, stagger along. Kun strode forward, approaching the positioning rune. His tactical interface was flashing with runes. After turning 4 corners, the white jade tower that had been obscuring his view receded, and he saw a magnificent theater. The refugees huddled inside, peering nervously through the windows at him. "By order of the Warmaster appointed by the Emperor of Mankind, you will be properly housed and resettled. Leave the theater immediately and proceed to the containment area." 25 civilians stepped forward, raising their hands and slowly walking over. Kun waved his arm, and a son of Horus stepped forward, forcing them toward the containment area. Seeing more refugees huddled inside the theater, he repeated, "By order of the Warmaster of the Emperor of Mankind." No one left the theater. Kun gripped the blade tightly, feeling like clowns stepping onto a stage to perform. "Action," he commanded, raising the bolt pistol. Boom! A corner of the white jade building exploded open, and Kun's gaze swept over the terrified faces of the refugees. He strode forward, while the refugees shrank back, those in front stepping on those behind. Amidst the chaotic screams, Kun crashed into the crowd, swinging his sword in a sweeping motion. The splattered bits of meat fell to the ground with a thud. The crowd scattered and fled, with a dozen or so people waving their hands. The flames rolled in and crashed into the iron cavalry Terminator armor. Supernatural flames scorched Kun's body, making him increasingly frenzied. Braving the flames, he rushed in front of Psyker and swung his sword down. The power sword crackled as it struck the shimmering, invisible shield. Bang! The psionic shield shattered, the power sword slashed down, and with a hiss of energy, tore Psyker apart. Just as Kun was about to pounce on the next rebel, cheers suddenly erupted from the depths of the theater. The waves came from afar and crashed into Kun's ears. Kun turned his head and looked. Just as he saw a flash of red, a violent electric current rushed towards him. Kun jerked his head to the side to avoid the lightning bolt, which struck the right shoulder armor of his iron cavalry Terminator armor. Blackened fragments scattered, and an electric current surged up his shoulder, snake-like, until his entire arm went numb in an instant. "Warlock," Kun said coldly, his shoulders shaking as his muscles rapidly recovered under the influence of adrenaline. Hather's obsidian eyes paled, and his pupils seemed to swell. Kun's figure, which had been rushing straight towards them, suddenly turned towards the 11 o'clock position. He swung his sword and struck the jade-carved pillar. Kun shook his head violently, trying to regain his composure from his frenzied state. Hather quietly approached him from behind, his psychological stealth completely deceiving Kun's chaotic thoughts. A magnificent scimitar was raised. PFF'd. The scimitar whirled, slashing again and again. The Grand Master of the Temple at Bright Feather School precisely dissects each heart and each lung. His control over flesh and blood ensured that every cut never touched the edge, yet without damaging any organs. Thump. The sons of Horus, who filed in, watched as the commander's corpse collapsed to the ground with a thud. They raised bolter and fired a volley at Hather. The diamond bullet flew out with a whoosh and then disintegrated in midair. The bullets turned into quicksand and scattered, covering the ground. 1,000 sons emerged, clad in magnificent iron cavalry Terminator armor, his scarlet armor embroidered with various geometric patterns. His right shoulder armor was emblazoned with a golden scarab beagle, while the curved star emblem on his left shoulder armor contained a sharp falcon talon. Following closely behind are the scarab Terminators, whose legion insignia on their left shoulder bears a burning phoenix. He waved his psionic staff, and a burst of flames surged forth, melting the sons of Horus, armor like candles. The intense heat of the explosion engulfed their bodies, and the billowing mist dissipated. Escort them to safety. This was the divine decree issued by the Black Emperor. His crucial task was to rescue the people and evacuate them after the sons of Horus entered the Old City. Although the Black Emperor did not explain the reason, Hather speculated that the sons of Horus, hiding behind the front lines and plundering civilians, must be using them for evil rituals. Most residents of Tizca possess latent psychic talents and should be included in the IO Tower level or higher psychers under the administration of Adeptus Astra Telepathica. On average, as many as 3 out of every 10 people in this class are psychers. Hather stepped out of the great door, waving his staff and unleashing bolts of lightning. He sensed the thought impulses shooting towards him, and he allowed Bellic Uthizer's thoughts to merge into a part of his mind. Val's custodial army has launched an offensive against the control tower of the orbital landing site, while the 2nd and 7th societies, led by Frieze and Ola Magma, have crossed the teleportation. Door network arrives, reinforcing the tower guards and Templars. I have dispatched Sewer to lead a team to support your activities in the Old City. Dreamwalker keenly perceived Uthizer's concerns, clearly indicating that the orbital transfer station held greater strategic value. Once the Imperial Guard captures the railroad transfer station, they can quickly deploy their forces in Tizca. But he not only brought the Scarab Terminators to the North District to attack the Sons of Horus, he also summoned Dreadnought of the Jackal House. Warrior, immobilize the forces of the Fifth Society. Fulfilling our Lord's divine decree is paramount, Warmaster's evil plan must be thwarted. 946 Lehman Russ, I authorize the use of phosphorescent weapons to completely purify this world. Tizca, the control tower of the rail transfer yard tower tip. Falcon School's Grand Master of the Temple, Francis Tower, leans on his silver scimitar, looking up at the gleaming golden motorcycle hurtling towards him. The curved front of the car resembles the sharp beak of a giant eagle, while the sides are like swept-back wings. Warrior, riding a motorcycle, is clad in golden armor, with scarlet feathers on the top of his helmet fluttering in the wind like banners. The rapid-fire cannons on the bottom of the motorcycle spewed fire, unleashing a barrage of bullets. Tower raised his left arm and grabbed at the air. 5 jet motorcycles plummeted like kites with broken strings, crashing onto the Hammerfall bunker below as Towerka swung his left arm. Amidst the billowing smoke, hundreds of Third Terra warriors clad in armor adorned with interwoven T-shaped patterns. Auxilia warrior turned to ashes. The Imperial Guard is nothing special, Towerka scoffed. He stretched out his arm and clenched his fist. The tattered steel structure of the Hammerfall bunker was torn apart. Tower swung his arm violently, sending the wreckage of the Hammer bunker tumbling and rolling as it hurtled towards the advancing Imperial Guard. Boom! The steel debris suddenly fell from the sky, kicking up clouds of dust. Tower frowned as he looked down. A slender figure clad in golden armor came into view. The lower half of her face was obscured by a silver mask, and teardrop patterns were tattooed around her black eyes. Sisters of Silence, Tower said with disgust. The guardian spirit Udipa, soaring through the air, swooped down and hovered above his head. There are more around her, Tower said, drawing his silver scimitar and turning to enter the control tower. He pulled out his bolt pistol and rushed down the stairs. The blazing flames flashed rapidly in Tower's eyes as he saw the 8th Society Company commander, Olamagma, surrounded by flames. Fireworks spun and flew, their dazzling light, like the birth of stars, crashing into 3 shield-bearing Imperial guards. A surging ethereal flames instantly engulfed the shield and golden armor. His guardian spirit swelled up and let out an explosive roar. 3 guards, brandishing their halberds, attacked Olamagma. The guardian spirit hovered around Oramagma, and flames suddenly erupted, forming a wall of fire around her body. Bang! 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 The guardian halberd struck the fiery shield with a piercing explosion. Olamagma unleashed a torrent of molten flames from his hands, engulfing the 3 golden armored guards. Tower raised his arm, and the explosive projectile shot out with a whoosh. Propelled by telekinesis, it spun rapidly and instantly struck the golden armored guard's brain. The silver scimitar drew an arc, and the 4 sets of golden armor shattered like eggshells. Udipa circled him rapidly, Towerka's eyes flashed with light, and he slammed the Imperial guards to the ground like straw, crushing them into piles of flesh and blood. Tower and Oramagma walk side by side, recklessly drawing upon the power of the guardian spirit. Etheric energy surged, and one after another, the Imperial guards perished in the etheric torrent. A whooshing sound rang out as a massive spear hurtled towards them. Udipa let out a sharp hiss and circled rapidly around Towerka. Tower suddenly raised his scimitar and spun it across his body. The spear of the sun god roared as it slammed into the psychic shield. Rumble! The marble floor trembled, and the entire control tower shook from the impact. Olamagmar raised his arm, and a flaming arrow flew out, striking the golden armor. The flaming arrows seemed to bounce off the mirror as if they had struck it directly. Just as Tower was about to raise his right arm to create a psychic shield to help Olamagma block the attack, the spear of the sun suddenly burst forth with a dazzling light like the sun. Tower was forced to swing his right arm, and Udipa tumbled and rolled in response. Rumble! The earth trembled violently as Tower blocked the blinding spear. The ethereal flames roared toward his creator, and when they were a fist's distance from the armor of Oromagma, they suddenly roared up, spinning into a pillar of fire that crashed toward Valdo. Oromagma didn't need to look back. He knew that only his father and the Grand Master of the Temple of the Fire Phoenix School possessed the ability to control fire above him. Caliphus. Perhaps, there's also Sanchez, the wolf pack's greatest enemy. Boom. The pillar of fire struck the golden armor, knocking Val back another step. Tower stared into the murderous eyes beneath the black hair, as Udipa slowly landed on his head. A torrent of ether flowed into his body, unleashing all the latent ferocity and power. He raised his scimitar and slashed down fiercely, while Val met it with a vibrating spear. Boom! The wild power of ether violently smashed through Valdo. The scorching spear flew with a whoosh and struck the spear of the sun god. "What are you?" Val asked Towerka and Oromagma with disgust. "I am." Both screams came to an abrupt halt at the same time. Tower and Oromagma's bodies began to boil, their forms undergoing a frenzied transformation and reshaping. Oromagma's flesh melted like paper, his body burning fiercely, and a blazing pillar of fire shot into the sky. Tower's organic body and inorganic armor twisted and merged, and supernatural tearing sounds echoed within the control tower. Flesh change. Caliphus's face turned pale. He pushed his mental state to the 9th level, suppressing the restless etheric fire within his body. He gazed ahead as ethereal flames and destructive psychic energy collided. Rumble. The control tower exploded with a deafening roar, and a pillar of fire shot into the sky, colliding with the invisible force field and soaring straight into the heavens. Caliphus did not cast any spells, letting his body fall as he looked up at the sky. The veil separating the real world from the ocean of souls was torn apart by the explosions of the two Flesh Change Company commanders. An etheric tide surged into the real world from the warp rift, sweeping across the entire city of Tizca. The Merkai sect's Death Oath wolf pack of the 11th Company heard angry roars and howls. A terrifying crimson phantom flashed past me. The first cataphracti Terminator of Dalian roared and charged toward the Great Library. The street suddenly turned, and the wolf pack, guided by fate, rushed off in an unknown direction. The hunting party of the 8th Company Reconnaissance Squad, advancing westward along Tizca, suddenly collapsed, their flesh and blood turning into dust and spilling out of their armor. Lehman Russ, who was running around north of Tizca and across various local battlefields, suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. Black lightning surged through the air, tearing the sky apart. An ominous stench filled the air, and breathing became sticky. Lehman Russ withdrew his gaze and shouted loudly at the black-clad butchers of the 7th Company. The Thousand Sons defied Allfather's prohibition, they forgot the lessons of the Darkness Age. They have betrayed imperial truth and are no longer the Brotherhood, but a corrupt and broken entity, devoid of any honor. He raised his right leg and stomped hard on the earth, which glowed with an evil green light. The war we are waging is no longer confined to the territory of the Empire. The Prospero have been cursed by the actions of their protectors and have no right to any mercy. The wolf pack will cleanse the world and prevent it from causing any more trouble for humans. I authorize the use of phosphorus weapons to completely purify this world. The Black Butchers shouted that they were all Terraborn. Like the Terraborns of other legions such as the 22nd chapter of the Ultramarines, the Terraborns of the Wild Wolves also undertake extermination missions. Lehman Russ's icy blue eyes swept over the runaway Black Butcher, switching to phosphate weapons, while the Fire Brigade's engineering artillerymen retrieved phosphate shells from their ammunition boxes. At the same moment Lehman Russ coldly issued the order, Caliphus crashed to the ground with a thud. He rose from the rubble and felt the etheric tide receding from his body in the surging Tizca. Caliphus looked around and saw a group of slender figures wielding longswords surrounding him. Sisters of Silence. Greater than. 947 Valdo's third failure. Tizca Old Town, Sons of Horus, Containment Block B25. Hather Matt walked in with an air of nonchalance, but no one noticed his scarlet armor. Hather walked between two rows of refugees and came to the area around the two Sons of Horus. He noticed that the two men were holding bronze watch-like instruments, which emitted a scarlet light as runes flashed, enveloping the refugees who approached them. The refugee trembled, clutching his shoulders under the threat of Sons of Horus's gun. As the light faded, the Sons of Horus on the left and right sides announced, Sector D, and Sector F, respectively. Hather silently observed the two men's actions and tone of voice. Based on his observations of the people of Tizca, he could basically conclude that the Sons of Horus were classified according to their psychic abilities. He saw a transport ship about to be filled with huddled refugees, and lightning crackled in his palm. It was only then that Sons of Horus discovered the hidden psychology within, right next to Hather. Blazing arcs of electricity shot out from his palm, knocking down more than a dozen sons of Horus as the exploding arcs of electricity tore their bodies apart. The sons of Horus around the camp raised their guns, aimed at the suddenly appearing thousand suns, and fired explosive shells with a roar. Several diamond warheads struck civilians, blasting their chests into piles of mud. With another wave of his hand, the Grand Master of the Temple of the Bright Feather School caused the ruptured intestines to grow rapidly, and flesh and blood to regenerate. Warlock. The sons of Horus roared as they unleashed a second wave of explosives. A raging white flame surged forth, engulfing the dense barrage of bullets and the sons of Horus. Sul Contep strode in, staff in hand. Although he was a member of the Fifth Society, he was not from the Sky Owl school to which Captain Uthizar belonged, but rather a chapel lecturer from the Fire Phoenix school. While each of the 1,000 Sons societies is primarily composed of members from the school of the company commander, it also includes members from the other 4 schools and a few members from the Hermitage. Lightning crackled and the sun blazed, annihilating all the sons of Horus within the containment zone. With tears in their eyes, the common people walked toward 1,000 Sons, who would save them. Hather took off his helmet, revealing a smile, when suddenly a thought impulse shot into his mind. Hather, the control tower of the rail transfer yard has exploded. The soul fires of Freeze and Olamagma have been extinguished. Hather thought of the Falcon School, Grand Master of the Temple, who was short-tempered yet always led the team to stand in front of the formation. He must have relied on the power of the Guardian Spirit. I saw no faith in my Lord in his heart, and I did not banish him. I went to the Phoenix Tower in Caliphus. Thinking of this, he quickly asked in his mind, where is Caliphus? He also participated in the battle against Valdo, but I cannot confirm his condition at the moment. He fell into the Soulless Ones. Hather heard Uthizar's response, continue searching the surrounding area. I'm heading to the orbital transfer station immediately. He said to Su after severing the mental link. We have cleared all the containment areas established by the Sons of Horus in the old district. Your new mission is to lead them to the Pyramid of Photep. You gather the scattered fighting brothers, auxilia and residents along the way and led them to retreat together. Yes, sir, Suer said. Of the warriors I brought, only 952 remain. Leading civilians through the rear of the wolf pack, even with teleportation. Even a door would be difficult to achieve. Despite relying on superior forces to divide and annihilate the Sons of Horus, the Fifth Society inevitably suffered over 2,000 casualties. Teleportation doors were all built inside large buildings, and some have already been destroyed as the wolf pack advanced. Hather stared at Sol, the man the Black Emperor had mentioned, along with Dor Kara and Motep from the Black Raven School. He has summoned Motep, a member of the Scarab Terminators, to break away from the alliance with the Ultramarines, and head to Alexandria IV. I must ensure Suer's survival, so that at least I have accomplished the task of meeting the 2 men my lord mentioned. Order Shadow and my Scarab will accompany you. The Black Emperor's oracle forbade him to bring Order Shadow back to Pyramid of Photep. He then ordered him to accompany Su, hoping that they might be able to save more 1,000 sons and make them serve the Black Emperor. Hather's eyes were deep. If you cannot return to the Pyramid of Photep, then follow Order Shadow to the underground fortress at the outpost outside the city. The wolf pack's rail bombardment flattened the surface stations, but the underground fortresses remained, which was also the path to survival pointed out by the Black Emperor. Sol was taken aback. The Scarab Terminators were the Legion's elite, and Chief Librarian had actually sent them to accompany him. I will definitely complete your task. After parting ways with Sol, Hather immediately found the Guardian Hydra Tomarek of the Jackal Order, who was on a mission in another containment area. He ordered Tomarek to hand over the rescued civilians to the Fifth Society's fighting brothers, and then led the Osiris Dreadnoughts to the orbital transfer station. Hather walked through a series of activated stone doors and emerged from the storage center near the orbital transfer station. He said to Tomarek, who came out behind him, spread out the search for Caliphus. As you command, Tomarek's deep voice replied. Hather ran quickly. Despite wearing Iron Cavalry Terminator armor, his body had been greatly enhanced during the hypnotist phase, and his speed driven purely by his physical body was faster than 1,000 Sons, who was wearing Tartarus-type armor. Desperate, he activated his biochemical energy, circulating it throughout his body, and his supernatural speed of movement far surpassed that of any 1,000 Sons. A gust of wind swept past him as he ran wildly toward the smoke-filled air. Suddenly, Hather's obsidian eyes caught a glimmer of silver light. Caliphus swung his scimitar to deflect a swift sword aimed at his throat, then swung it backhand, striking the slender woman's shoulder bone. He pulled hard. Isn't it quiet now? The Sisters of Silence struggled against Caliphus's pull, but Astarte's strength completely overwhelmed him. Caliphus roared as he pulled Sisters of Silence in front of him, swung his fist, and slammed it into her bald head. Bang! The Sisters of Silence's heads exploded like watermelons, their blood splattering onto Caliphus. Flames ignited on the surface of Caliphus's armor, instantly, growing into a ring of fire. Etheric flames swirled, melting blood and corpses into ashes. Roar! Caliphus roared, regaining his ethereal power, and his whole body trembled with a sense of exhilaration. Careful! The familiar notification sound rang in Caliphus's ears, and a picture suddenly flashed through her mind. Clad in golden armor, Constantine Valder raised his spear and thrust it into his own back. On either side of him, a dozen or so Sisters of Silence leaned forward and quickly surrounded him. Through the footage captured by the psionic Drake, Caliphus saw a glimmer of hope. He rolled on the spot, a golden glint flashed past the corner of his eye, and at the same time, the flames surrounding him suddenly went out. Psionic Drake spun into the air and saw that it was Hather who had just reminded him. Caliphus smiled bitterly. He had just broken through the encirclement of the Sisters of Silence when Vol caught up with him. Without their psionic powers, neither of them could possibly be a match for Valdo. As Caliphus pondered, Hather's eyes dimmed, his pupils narrowed, and an invisible wave surged forward. The Sisters of Silence's swift steps suddenly became chaotic, 2 sprinted away, 8 spun in place, and 1 stood frozen, trembling all over. Only those who were walking alongside Vol were unaffected and pounced on Caliphus. Hather's eyes flashed with golden light as he fixed his gaze on Vol and the Sisters of Silence. Commander Crow of the Night Watch recalled his previous missions. She was ordered to cleanse Psyker, severing the heads of children with her sword. She gave the order to plant molten bombs, turning everyone in Hive City, along with the mutant who had taken over Upper Hive, into ashes. Tears welled in Crow's eyes, and she wept silently. Vol suddenly recalled a scene in his mind, Alfarius holding a royal spear and a detonator in front of the golden aircraft. That was his first failure. The second time was when a blazing light burst into the laboratory, tearing apart more than a dozen Imperial guards. His lord's grand plan has failed. I will never fail a third time. Vol roared to the sky. Taking advantage of the moment, Hather grabbed the dazed Caliphus and said, "Let's go." He endured the needle-like pain in his sun acupoint and injected biochemical energy into Caliphus's body. The two of them immediately became light and flew at a supernatural speed. 2 psionic drakes hovered overhead, projecting the scene behind them into Hather and Caliphus's minds. Vol pursued relentlessly, followed by a series of Sisters of Silence. A crimson light suddenly shot into Hather's eyes. "Invaders, die!" roared Guardian Tomarek, one of the first recruits of Prospero. Ocelon Dreadnought raised his left arm, and Vol's right boot shattered with a deafening roar. Vol was caught off guard and stepped into empty air. He raised the Spear of the Sun and plunged it into the collapsed pit, using the force to leap up. Boom boom boom. "Invaders, die!" Ocelon Dreadnought raised his right arm, and the twin-barreled machine gun fired a dense barrage of bullets, engulfing a Sisters of Silence. The howls of jackals rang out. Vol strode forward, his eyes fixed on Hather and Caliphus. Raging flames surged forth, and black lightning struck down. "I am your doom." He swung the Sun God Spear and plunged it into a dreadnought. Boom. The giant fist, crackling with electricity, slammed into the golden armor, knocking off a fist-sized piece of armor and a name engraved inside. Vol delivered a flying kick, bringing Dreadnought down. A torrent of molten metal rushed towards them, and Vol thrust out several spears. Golden light pierced through the flames and struck his golden armor with a crack. The magnificent armor was jet black, but Vol only saw the 2 people running. Caliphus watched as Legion heroes fell one by one, his eyes blazing with fury. "We can't run away." Flames erupted in his hand as he turned and hurled his spear. Hather believed in the Black Emperor's prophecy of Prospero's destruction, and he gripped Caliphus's arm, infusing it with his newly restored spirituality. "The Sisters of Silence and the Imperial Guards are catching up, any later and we'll be surrounded. We must return to the temple, rebuild our defenses, and not let the Guardians' sacrifices be in vain." The soothing stopped Caliphus's arms from struggling, and he was dragged by Hather towards the warehouse. Vol swung his arms, and the Spear of the Sun God thrust out. The golden spear tip collided with the blazing white spear tip. Boom! Vol's body trembled. Intruder, Tomarak's mangled body burned fiercely as he freed Osiris from binding his soul. The mechanical claw burned fiercely, radiating light like the sun. Die! His life-consuming strike slammed into Vol's breastplate. Bang! The golden armor was dented, and the 4 names were annihilated by the flames. Vol staggered backward. Tomarek swung his arm, his steel body creaking, the ethereal flames flickering. Vol steadied himself, silently swung his arm, and the spear pierced through the mangled body of Osiris Dreadnought. Protect, Tomarek said in a low voice, his mind flashing back to the keeping landing, where he, as the commander of a heavy firepower squad, won the victory. The final battle of Lactus, his last battle before his death. Now, it's truly over. Tomarek's body collapsed. Vol silently walked around the corpse and looked around. The two leaders of the Thousand Suns school had vanished without a trace. He gripped the sun god's gift tightly. This was his third failure. No, I have not failed. I will kill every traitor. Vol took a few more steps and headed towards the center of Tizca. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. With so many Sisters of Silence around me, how can Hathermat still cast spells? Greater than 948 Magnus's orange soul fragment falls towards the shadow of sovereignty. Inside the Phoenix Tower, Chief Librarian of Thousand Suns, Hathermat and the Grand Master of the Temple from Fire Phoenix School, Caliphus walked out of the teleportation building with a gloomy expression. Door. Behind them followed the Thousand Suns, supporting each other, their armor tattered and each bearing wounds. With the arrival of the Imperial Guard, especially the Sisters of Silence, the battlefield situation rapidly deteriorated. The Sisters of Silence not only suppressed the Thousand Suns' psychic abilities but also interfered with teleportation. The door activated, dispelling the psionic fog and dissipating the illusory storm. The wolf pack, lured by illusions, began a frenzied advance, and the battle lines were completely breached. Phil, he's out of control, a thought impulse shot into their brains. Hather and Caliphus exchanged glances and immediately understood each other's thoughts. They ran quickly outside. As soon as the two ran out of the Fire Phoenix Golden Tower, they saw the company commander of the Seventh Society hovering in the air, overlooking the battlefield. Hissing blood flowed from the surface of his armor, and whip-like arcs of ethereal energy danced between his fingers. A blazing light emanated from his body, like the core of a plasma reactor in a void ship. Torin's eyes swept across the battlefield, noticing the skulls hanging from the wolves, as well as the Falcon Skull, sign and the symbol of the Seventh Society. He raised his arm, and hundreds of wolves were blasted away by his telekinesis, their armor falling apart piece by piece, and flesh peeling off their bones. Hather saw Torin's armor ripple, and fleshy tentacles suddenly burst forth from within it. Phil, control yourself. He forcefully unleashed a burst of bioenergy. My father said that power can only be used by people when it is restrained. Torin's body trembled, his tentacles exploded, and the undulating armor calmed down. The guardian spirit, Ditoa, roared down, and etheric energy surged into Torin's body. Torin looked down at Hather and Caliphus, let out a terrified scream, and then his body exploded like a supernova. The dazzling light spread rapidly, sweeping across the entire battlefield. The 3,000 surviving members of the Seventh Society trembled. 1,000 Suns' armor cracked open, and mutated flesh and blood gushed out. His head twisted and slid down to his waist, and his body split open, revealing countless sharp teeth. His arms and legs were bent, and his flesh was twisted into a lumpy mass. The malevolent tentacles burst open the 1,000 Suns, which was 5 meters to his right. Scaled limbs and wrinkled tissues were squeezed out of the neck armor like glue, making a sticky, wet sound. To his left front, a fountain of blue flames engulfed another 1,000 Suns, instantly burning it to ashes. Opposite 1,000 Suns, a space wolves knelt on the ground, their hands extending sharp claws that pierced through their gauntlets. 10 meters to his right, another wolf's helmet exploded, and its blood-yellow eyes held no trace of intelligence. He lunged at the wolf beside him, only to be met with razor-sharp teeth. The entire city of Tizca was suddenly shrouded in a black, swirling haze. The communication channels fell completely silent, and the images captured by the helmet's built-in bird detection system were blurry. The wolf swung its battle axe down, but the blade missed, and the crimson runes flashed and disappeared. Another wolf, wielding a chainsword, slashed down enemy after enemy, fighting day after day. Bang! After fighting for countless years, he collapsed from exhaustion. 1,000 Sons of the Black Raven School roared excitedly, his captured futuristic silk strings displaying a landscape littered with wolf carcasses, with only 1,000 Suns standing tall. The warp storm swept across Tizca, deeply distorting the structure of reality and tearing apart all dimensions. Time was torn into chaotic patterns, and everyone caught in them experienced severe hallucinations. They even saw another version of the future, where events unfolded in a completely different trajectory. Bright Feather School, Grand Master of the Temple Hather's gaze swept across the battlefield, where the vast number of 1,000 Suns gathered became the carriers of the flesh change. The power of mutation spread across the battlefield exponentially, and the curse it triggered also affected space wolves. The flesh-changed Thousand Sons and the mutated werewolf pounce on the nearest creature. Thousand Sons dragged their flesh and blood, unleashing terrifying blue flames that engulfed the pointed tower guards wrapped in red coats. Werewolf swung its sharp claws, tearing open the throats of the siege artillerymen. Biochemical energy surged within Hather, flowing through his body and left hand, suppressing the mutated power erupting within him and Caliphus. He forced a smile. The wolves accused us of being warlocks. Monster, now look at yourselves. Curse werewolf. Leman Russ and his wolf cubs are here, what do we do? The voice of Bellic Uthizar, the Grand Master of the Temple of the Sky Owl School, echoed in Hather's mind. Hather looked ahead and saw two giant wolves leap into view. They pounced on Thousand Sons, opening their blood-red mouths. Leman Russ wielded the roaring chainsword, its whirling serrations tearing through the scarlet armor like grass. Retreat, retreat to the Pyramid of Photep. Hather shouted, rather than answering in his mind. He followed the Black Emperor's decree and shouted to the Pyramid of Photep. Father, if you want to see us perish, then we will perish before your eyes. Uthizar silently transmitted Chief Librarian's orders into the minds of all the Thousand Sons on the battlefield. Retreat, retreat to the Pyramid of Photep. The Thousand Sons retreated along the wide basalt road toward the Pyramid of Photep, pursued by howling wolves. The mutated flesh monsters and cursed werewolf darted between the lines, slaughtering every living thing around them. Night suddenly enveloped the entire city of light, and black rain poured down, soaking everything in the blink of an eye. Purple lightning cleaved through the black vortex, sending shards of rock flying. The wolf pack, the royal guards, and the Sisters of Silence halted, watching the fiery giant descend from the top of the Pyramid of Photep. Magnus's voice resounded in the minds of every Thousand Sons. This has always been my doom, not yours. You are my children, and I have failed you. He tossed a psychic crystal into his hand, saying, it comes from the reflecting caves, and each of you has one on your chest. When the time comes, pour all of your energy into the crystal. Hathor, led my offspring into the Tower of Pyramids. He spoke again, but only Hather could hear him. Amen has a priceless gift waiting for you. You must take it with you, or all we have done will have been in vain. Hather's heart skipped a beat, and he suppressed his joy with his bright feather technique, responding in his mind. Yes, ma'am. Boom. Magnus's body crashed into the front of the retreating Thousand Sons, and a bright, self-generated green flame spread out, incinerating thousands of cursed werewolf. The earth cracked open, the waters surrounding the Pyramid of Photep churned, and dark waves swept up the wind, carrying countless fragments and pinning hundreds of recklessly pursuing wolves to the ground. Magnus's golden armor and wild red hair burst forth with dazzling ethereal energy. He waved his staff, unleashing fierce arcs of electricity that reduced armored vehicles to wreckage. His single eye swept over the wolves, and the flickering, endless chaos drove anyone who met his gaze instantly insane. The ocean of souls surged, and the sky became a transparent window leading into the warp. A colossal, mountain-like spherical eye and countless monsters gazed down, while thousands of Third Terra members looked up at the terrifying monsters. Auxilia warrior perished on the spot. The wolf pack, as if bound by reins, suddenly stopped. Only Leman Russ and his wolf brothers, Frecky and Jerry, strode forward. Raindrops pounded on Leman Russ's armor, and lightning flashed all around. Hather gripped the crystal tightly, along with the Black Raven School, Grand Master of the Temple. Ahriman, Fire Phoenix School, Grand Master of the Temple Caliphus and the Sky Owl School, Grand Master of the Temple Uthizar and the others ran together toward the Pyramid of Photep. As soon as he stepped into the tower, he encountered Primarch's attendant. Amen. Amen was carrying a heavy box with a large cold steel padlock on it. Hather reached out and touched the iron lock, which opened with a soft click, revealing a dark red book. Open double angle bracket Book of Magnus close double angle bracket. Hather, suppressing his excitement, took the book out. I can't see my father and the wolves, Uthizar said worriedly, looking back at the battlefield. I can see part of it, Ahriman said, seeing Leman Russ unleash a hailstorm of attacks on Magnus, shattering the breastplate adorned with giant horns. The father retaliated with a ball of scorching cold flame, shattering Leman Russ's armor and scorching his braided hair. Wolves and the Imperial Guard. Caliphus shouted. The wolves and the Imperial Guards crossed the water and moved toward the battlefield. Magnus waved his hands, and the black liquid suddenly turned into corrosion acid, scorching the armor. Beneath his feet transformed into a foul-smelling swamp, from which a twisted form emerged, dragging the wolf pack and the Imperial Guard into the water. This is Primarch's battlefield, and our mission is to wipe out the Thousand Sons. Warlock. Constantine Valder, commander of the Imperial Guard, stared intently into the Golden Tower, looking at Hather holding the giant book. He would not allow any rebels to escape. Magnus's fists were covered in flames and lightning, and a destructive torrent of ether completely tore open the curtain. A deafening thunderclap resounded, the earth trembled violently, and a crack that tore the ground opened up the entirety of Tizca. The ocean of souls washed over the senses of the thousand suns, its dazzling light overwhelming everything. I can't see anything, Ahriman said. The final battle has begun. Dreamwalker's eyes flashed with golden light as he gazed at the battlefield. Magnus punched Leman Russ in the chest, and a shard of armor pierced Leman Russ's heart. Leman Russ seized Magnus's right arm, and a deafening explosion of bones shattering rang out. The etheric blade appeared out of thin air in Magnus's left palm and plunged into Leman Russ's chest. The blade pierced through his back, and Leman Russ let out a deafening roar. Frecky and Jerry leapt up, their jaws clamping tightly around Magnus's legs. Magnus punched the white wolf on the head, and with a thought, tossed the black wolf away. Leman Russ roared in agony, following the guidance of the lifeline, and swung the millennial. The flashing light suddenly subsided, and the flames vanished without a trace. Magnus covered his one eye, and blood dripped down his cheeks. The battered and bruised Leman Russ lunged at Magnus, grabbing his brother's waist as he had wrestled with the giant wolf. He roared as he lifted Magnus up and slammed him heavily onto his knees. The sound of Magnus's spine breaking tore at the heart of every thousand suns, except Hather. He silently channeled spiritual energy into the crystal in his hand. Magnus whispered a series of supernatural syllables, and his body instantly disintegrated. A dazzling light swept across the pyramid of Photep, enveloping each of the thousand suns within it. The surface of Prospero twisted, and Hather and the thousand suns felt the whole world turn upside down as they fell into endless tunnels. The darkness of the universe's end engulfed me, and countless images bombarded my mind. Hather ascended to Thelema third layer state of mind. Shattered streaks of light streaked across warp, one of them, an orange streak trailing a tail of flame, passing through the veil and appearing in the eastern edge of the galaxy. The light slid down, falling towards a black, void behemoth. Countless images surged within the orange light. He and Perturabo entered the asymmetrical palace. He discussed art with Nimrod and Perturabo. They compete at the galactic center. My thoughts suddenly became clear. It was the shadow of sovereignty. 949 hoping Lord Nimrod will come soon to save us survivors. Shadow of sovereignty, Primarch office. Nimrod suddenly raised his head, his obsidian-like eyes flashing with light as he gazed into the void. A dazzling beam of light shot out from warp, whistling through the cold void before crashing into the ape force field. Boom! The silent collision created ripples in the void, scattering the floating meteorites around them. Nimrod's eyes narrowed, he sensed a familiar aura emanating from the dazzling light. He was as fiery as a burning star, yet he was also imbued with flawless kindness. Crimson Magnus. A fragment of Magnus's soul. Nimrod seemed thoughtful. He remembered that after Magnus's soul shattered, the fragments appeared in many places of great significance or beside people he cherished. The ruins of Tizca, the City of Light, the webway of Argos, Mahavatus Karimachus, the Primarch's private remembrancer who wrote the Book of Magnus. As Nimrod pondered, the blazing light shone even brighter, and fragments of Magnus's soul crashed into the ape force field time and time again. Boom! A blazing arrow, imbued with unwavering determination, pierced the palace. A piercing alarm sounded, echoing between the decks. Nimrod raised his hand and pressed the communication bead, speaking across the entire channel. There are no enemies invading, only an old friend. Everything is as usual for you. After he hung up the communication, a thought struck him, and Jokero emerged from the cabin to repair the damaged ape force field. Nimrod walked out of his office and into the palace, where he saw a giant with scarlet skin wearing a white robe made of ether. He looked up at the chapter banners hanging asymmetrically above his head, 3 on the left, 4 on the right, and 5 in the center. I remember Perturabo frowning when he first came here. I remember him saying he would tear down your palace and rebuild one for you. Nimrod stared at him as he turned around, his orange eyes saying, "That's right." He knew that the fragments of Magnus's soul would reveal a particular aspect of his multifaceted nature. Terra's part represents the most beautiful and benevolent aspect, while the part that merges with Karimachus embodies a pure pursuit of knowledge. You're not mistaken, but why have you come here? Nimrod asked inquiringly. Those were the best times in Great Crusade, the 3 brothers working together towards the same goal. Magnus's eyes sparkled. How I long to return to that time at the heart of the galaxy. Nimrod gazed thoughtfully at Magnus, seemingly with an air of friendship or brotherhood. Magnus's orange eyes suddenly turned bloodshot, and he roared angrily. The soulless one. He clenched his crimson fist, staring at Etzik, who carried the spear of Bacchus on his back. They destroyed my world and slaughtered my people. Nimrod gestured for Etzik and the guards to leave with his eyes, and then he put his arm around Magnus's. As his fingertips touched her, he felt the red skin tremble slightly. Magnus closed his one eye slightly. I have failed. I am ambitious and seek to achieve something unprecedented. I was reckless and disobeyed my father's warnings, I killed everyone. Nimrod sensed Magnus's frustration and regret, and with a slight pull, he led Magnus to the side of the platform. After the two sat down side by side, he slowly began to speak. What happened? As Magnus began to recount everything that had happened in Prospero, inside the silver fortress guarding the great door in the east of Tizca. Sul Kontep of the Fifth Society stood at the center of the crowd, holding the inscription, Chief Librarian, on his head. Hather Mat led the residents of the old town in the North District to their evacuation. On his journey, he rescued Commander Cardinafi of the Paladin Guards, and he led the remaining 100 or so men in a fierce resistance. Then, we arrived at the Silver Fortress. This formidable fortress, reinforced by Forge World Jiao Akata's cybernetic automata and aided by the Fire Phoenix School, which had been defeated by the Imperial Guard at the orbital transfer station, and their Akia-type fortress robots withstood the Wolf's attack. Jiao Akata is the Forge World of the Thousand Suns Covenant, and established the Forge Temple in Tizca. Warmaster dispatched 12 Dead Skull Legion Titans to attack Jiao Akata's Forge Temple, but the defenders wisely chose to retreat. Sage Tower Sitter, working closely with the Thousand Suns, employs Psyker to conduct experiments, studying the generation and manifestability of related psychic phenomena. His research findings were ultimately applied to the combat robots of the Jiao Akata Mind Control Legion, including the mind control technology that was accused of heresy by some factions within the Adeptus Mechanicus. They utilized a large number of synthetic mapping neural networks and special cortical materials in the intelligent core, enabling them to work together under the interference of psionic phenomena and warp storms. Using their familiarity with the environment and the enemy's communication disruptions, they lured 12 Titans into the wilderness, thus escaping the enemy. Sewer gripped his staff tightly as he listened to the report from the lecturer of the Sky Owl School, Temple. I gathered the strength of all the members of the school and tried to establish contact with any high-ranking officials, such as Chief Librarian. But I can't get in touch with any of the company commanders or the monastic mentors right now. From the twisted thought impulses and shadows of the ocean of souls, I glimpsed something. He took a deep breath, ascended to the first level of Magnus's state of mind, and cleared his chaotic thoughts. Father is dead. Pyramid of Photep is destroyed. The Thousand Suns wanted to loudly condemn his treason, but the moment that had pierced their hearts not long ago still lingered deep within them. The Wolf Pack and the Imperial Guard, with the Sisters of Silence at their core, were still hunting down their fleeing brothers in arms, cursing Werewolf, and the temple instructor from Sky Owl School began. Flesh Change's fighting brothers roam around. The members of Black Raven School closed their eyes slightly and spoke in a deep voice. The ocean of souls is churning, and I cannot accurately grasp the threads of fate. I saw destruction. After pondering for a few seconds, Sewer asked, how many people do we have now? The 592 members of the Fifth Society, the 2,000 members of the Eighth Society's detachment guarding the Silver Fortress, and the 1,037 scattered fighting brothers from various societies whom we have gathered together. Calton combined the Paladin Guards and the Spire Tower Guards, totaling 4,600 men. Tizca has 18,000 residents. Adeptus Mechanicus's red robes fluttered as the sonic synthesizer emitted mechanical sounds. Cybernetic Automata 129. Sul nodded. We might be all the survivors in Tizca. We can only rely on ourselves now. My plan is to seize aircraft and anti-gravity vehicles, use low-altitude flight and bombing of the remaining ashes to reach the sea. When the last wave of invaders withdrew, they launched a surprise attack on the orbital transfer station and took control of the ships to escape. Although Hather gave the order, Sue didn't want to sit idly by and wait to die. He decided to embark on a dangerous escape. You are not on your own, said the seasoned lawyer, clad in black armor. Lord Hather told me that my father would soon take action to rescue us. The Thousand Suns' eyes lit up, and after a few seconds of thought, Sewer spoke. This concerns all of us, are you sure? Of course. Order Shadow replied without hesitation. We should immediately evacuate the fortress and head to the underground stronghold in the wilderness. The people my father sent will come to pick us up soon. Okay. Sewer nodded. Hopefully Lord Nimrod will come soon to save his survivors. Greater than 950 doesn't include Lehman Russ's Codex Omega, a tribute to Warmaster, but I can have the Alpha Codex. The Shadow of Sovereignty, inside the palace with its asymmetrical architectural style. Nimrod and Magnus talked for 3 days and 3 nights, from their meeting with Prospero to the Galactic Center's fight against the Squad Alliance. Finally, they talked about the warp sailing competition on their way to Ullanor after leaving Argos. The illusory sound of prayer echoed in his ears, and Nimrod immediately rose. This book is being published for the first time, providing you with a reading experience free of errors and disordered chapters. He gazed at Magnus, pondering how to deal with the arrival of the Magnus fragments. Nimrod recalled that Lemuel Gaumont had fused with a fragment of Magnus in his memory. Although he was later separated from it, his psionic power increased greatly, and he gained insight into a vast amount of psionic secrets, eventually becoming one of the 4 founders of Inquisition. The Empire's understanding of psionic energy almost entirely originated from him, in addition to the knowledge possessed by clandestine organizations such as the Grey Knights. The one who fully merged with Magnus was Rivera Vita of the Fourth Society, the Thousand Sons, who fought alongside Captain Menes Calliston in the expeditionary fleet. After losing contact with the Legion, they immediately returned to Prospero, where they encountered the World Eaters. Avita was separated from the Legion and later encountered Jagatai, who came to Prospero to find the truth. He used his psychic powers to help Jagata return to Terra, but after the Battle of Kalayam Gate, while guiding White Scar to Terra, he was overwhelmed by flesh change. He was brought before Malkador when he was on the verge of death. Malkador bound the glittering shards of Magnus to Avatar, thus saving the last 1,000 sons in his heart. The reborn Aviata becomes Janus, the first supreme master of the Grey Knights. This is a method that binds a fragment of Magnus to anyone, even myself, and greatly enhances psionic power. At least, this aspect of his soul won't fall into Tzeentch's hands. But are there other options? Perhaps the new abilities gained after advancing to Role of the Fallen will offer new insights. After some thought, Nimrod smiled and said, "My crew won't be used to your arrival, so I would like to ask you to stay here for the time being." Magnus nodded. "I still have a lot to think about. Many memories are still hidden deep within my mind. I will come to see you often." Nimrod nodded slightly, then turned and left the palace, closing the great door. Walking up to Etzik, he raised his hand, pressed the communication bead, and switched Arsenadun's communication channel. No one is allowed to enter the palace. Untouchables must be present at all important meetings, and an Euclidean rune must be set up. Follow your will. Primarch's attendant respectfully complied. Nimrod quickly returned to his bedroom, and once out of everyone's sight, he stepped out and arrived at the Nation of Disorder. After ascending the throne in the 4th dimension, he spread his spirituality and touched the pale golden sphere of light that was constantly expanding and contracting. Nimrod saw the chief librarian of 1,000 Sons, Hather Mat, knelt on the altar and prayed to the Black Emperor. "My lord, we have been transferred to a planet with 9 suns and towers as tall as flutes. My father lived in the one-eyed tower and never saw anyone. I found the teleportation access point in the Book of Magnus. The door's method, through its power and the surging ethereal waves of the 9 suns world, opened a doorway to the real world. Come here and pray to you." When Nimrod heard that Hather had obeyed his command and not preyed on Warlock, he spread his spirituality and pulled Hather into the Nation of Disorder. Hather reshaped his blonde hair into short black hair and transformed his eyes into black pupils. He knelt on the ground shrouded in black mist. "My lord, I obeyed your command, banished the guardian spirit of Caliphus, destroyed the sons of Horus's army, and sent Sul-Kontep to save the inhabitants." Nimrod nodded slightly after listening to Hather's report. He has achieved most of his goals in Burning of Prospero. First of all, the Grand Master of the Temple from Fire Phoenix School is amazing. Caliphus. Secondly, he guided Sul-Kontep onto a different path. Nimrod recalled that Sul led his team to seize 3 void ships, taking advantage of the Imperial fleet's dispersed nature to quietly bypass the Imperial main force, but one was still sunk during the pursuit. Instead of joining the rebels, Sul met with Malkador, became an important force in the siege of Chthonia, and prevented the word-bearer's ritual. The ritual was never completed, but its purpose was to provide Horus with some kind of advantage in his duel with the Emperor. Finally, he stopped Sons of Horus from hunting Tizca civilians. Nimrod remembered that Boros Khun's 5,000 Sons of Horus had never joined the main battle. They first rounded up civilians in the Old Town, and then, after securing victory with the Wolves, the Imperial Guard, and the Sisters of Silence, they spread throughout Tizca to take in refugees. During their final evacuation, they used artillery to destroy all containment areas and erase all traces. In the future Great Birthday celebration, a large number of Psykers defect from Auxilia and the cult forces. Horus successfully amassed assets in the burning of Prospero and corrupted them through chaos, using them as his own power. "Horus, you didn't expect this, did you?" I won the first round of our battle on Prospero. Not only did you fail to gain the power you desired, you also lost nearly 5,000 sons of Horus. While Nimrod was pondering, Hather continued his report. I counted the survivors, and there were a total of 3,946,000 sons who survived. Nimrod nodded slightly. In his memory, the number was 1,242. He recalled Hather's report and realized that it was because of the task he had ordered Hather to complete that the fleet change occurred prematurely, and the 1,000 sons front collapsed. Both 1,000 sons and the wolves lost a lot of men. I wonder if I can still be so arrogant. Although Nimrod has already defeated the Third Society, the Cult of Destruction, and Alexandria IV, totaling approximately 23,000 sons, he still has the potential to defeat the forces led by Saul. However, the main force of the Fourth Society and the 1,000 sons scattered throughout the galaxy still number quite a few, and many of them will gather on Warlock. Nimrod recalled that during the Siege of Terra, approximately 10,000 sons participated in the battle. You continue to solidify Caliphus's subconscious and attempt to modify Dor Kara's consciousness. Dor Kara of the Black Raven School is also the most outstanding psionic craftsman of the 1,000 sons, whose skill in this area even surpasses that of the other two school members, Ahriman and Aemon. More importantly, his loyalty to Magnus was not unwavering. Nimrod recalled that he had become a loyalist at one point due to premonition and a loss of faith in the Legion. But during the Siege of Terra, he returned to Magnus's side. He crafted a series of psionic items, ultimately orchestrating the implementation of Magnus's spells, allowing the rebel fleet to advance directly from the zodiacal plane into the heart of Terra. This not only renders Perturbo's advance on Terra meaningless, but also renders Dorne's meticulously constructed Sol system void defenses ineffective. Dor Kara, who keeps switching sides, is clearly not determined enough and is someone whose stance can be changed. Do you mean I should stay with my father? That's right. Nimrod remembered 1,000 sons. The flesh change and the warlock planetary chaos and corruption will take a considerable amount of time. In fact, until the Siege of Terra, the 1,000 sons, including Ahriman, Aemon, Dorkala, Sobek, and Sanakht, had not yet been corrupted by chaos. With a thought, the Book of Magnus flew into his hands out of thin air. The pages were flipped through rapidly, with more than 30 pages passing by in each breath. After imprinting the secrets and spells acquired by Magnus into his mind, Nimrod's eyes flickered as he gazed at a page containing the seal of Sithin, a lesser god of chaos from the kingdom of dragons. His body was surrounded by thunder and lightning, but he was trapped by layers of golden chains. With a thought from Nimrod, the dark red book returned to Hather's hands. My lord, this is my offering to you. You hold this for me first. Without it, you won't be able to get back to Warlock, and Magnus will become suspicious. Hather trembled. My lord is so concerned about my safety. I never expected my lord would still allow me to follow my father. I had intended to leave the Legion and serve my lord. He thought regretfully, and then began to report. I encountered the cunning wolf rune priest in Tizca. Oshel Wardmek. He blasphemed you, and I, in his name, punished him to death. Nimrod felt as if an annoying fly had been swatted, and he encouraged the proactive Hather. Well done. Sanchez would be happy to hear this news. Hather hugged the Book of Magnus, his hands clasped together and held upside down. Those who blaspheme against you are my mortal enemies. Just as Nimrod was about to send Hather back to the real world, he suddenly remembered that Leman Russ had gathered all the wolves who participated in the battle and compiled the Codex Omega, which recorded his combat experience with the Astartes. He dedicated Codex Omega to Warmaster alone, and Horus fully absorbed its valuable experience, giving Sons of Horus targeted training and sharing it with other rebel factions. Leman Russ was filled with regret upon learning of Warmaster's betrayal. Although I don't have Leman Russ's Codex Omega * dedicated to Warmaster, I can have the Alpha Manual. You gather the 1,000 sons, gather their experiences in fighting the wolves, compile a Alpha Codex, and present it to me. I will obey your will. Hather respectfully complied. Nimrod sent Hather back to the real world, and then spread his spirituality, touching the red orb. He was going to send someone to fetch Sul and the others who were still in Prospero. 951 We have Lord Nimrod's help, are you afraid to take a gamble? Hasik Khan, from the White Scars, of the 4th level of the Nation of Disorder, finds himself in the land of black mist. He gazed at the imposing figure seated atop the throne deep within the black mist, my lord. Before the Black Emperor could even ask, he took the initiative to report. I was summoned by the Great Khan to fight in Shandex and wipe out the remnants of the Uruk-Urg Greenskin Empire. Warmaster has betrayed the Empire. Nimrod paused, giving Hasik time to process the information. Warmaster, Hosik's pupils dilated, almost swallowing the whites of his eyes. A few seconds later, he asked, "My lord, how should I proceed?" "The Alpha Legion has sided with Warmaster. They arrived in Shandex before you and are building numerous covert space stations in the void. Each space station can intercept and block interstellar communications. The entire galaxy was already isolated before you arrived in Shandex. At the same time, they have also established secret outposts in many worlds to secretly hinder the progress of the entire campaign and prevent you from achieving a swift victory." Hosik suddenly recalled a question that had been lingering in his mind, and he analyzed it from the perspective of conspirer. So that's how it is. Shebin discovered on Feme's IV that 5 Claw Brotherhood warriors, who were deployed 3 months ago, were dead, but there were no greenskin corpses around. They must have been killed by a lurking Alpha. You reveal the mystery to me in the hope that I will break free from the trap of Alpha. That's right. Nimrod nodded slightly and gave the order. Break through the Alpha blockade as soon as possible and head to Prospero to investigate the truth behind the destruction. Upon arriving in Prospero, you must search for traces of Sul Contep and the Thousand Suns, and deliver them to the ships in Tagan. He recalled Prospero's Magnus fragments and Tagan Khan's recent digestion of the conspirer. On a whim, he sent Hosik the information about burning of Prospero, and the fragments of Magnus's soul. You instructed Tagan to plot along the way, capture Magnus's soul fragments alive, display the complete plot in front of him, and administer the potion to him amidst his fearful and frustrated gaze. If it were the complete Magnus, Tagan's actions would be tantamount to suicide, but now his power is dispersed and his strength is greatly weakened. His strength is similar to that of the original, but he is not being driven by the craves. The ritual by which our Lord bestows strength. Hosik thought to himself thoughtfully. Follow your will. At the same moment Nimrod sends Hosik back to the real world, the Houndsfang of the 18th Company of the World Eaters, Legion. Mago wore a simple outfit made of iron wire, in shades of bronze, cream, and midnight blue that clashed sharply with the colors of World Eaters' current armor. This cloak was a gift from Keel, the last commander of the War Hounds, after the Cyberman's conquest. In that battle, Mago, as commander, led his company through a massive technological barbarian army, shattering the enemies while in turning the tide of the war. After the war, Keel dressed him in a cloak in the Triumph Hall of Conqueror, in front of all the War Hounds. Mago looked around at everyone and began to speak. Warmaster has betrayed us. 9. The meeting hall fell silent for 3 seconds, after which Korag, the company commander of the 21st Company, stepped out from the crowd. Mago, you are accusing Warmaster of rebellion, the Emperor's beloved son. I haven't stooped so low as to mispronounce a name. Mago met Korag's gaze. Gulan told me this, and he also told me something even more cruel. 37. Our father tyrant will purge those in the Legion who are disloyal to him from Istvan. Think about who his purge targets are. The company commander of the 37th Company, Captra, looked grave. Gulan is deeply trusted by Angron. If he said it, it is very likely to be true. Since chief apothecary after Gulan Surik developed Butcher's Nails, he became a useful person in Angron's eyes. The consensus within the Legion is that, in Angron's eyes, besides Khan, there is only Garin. Theirs, whose position as chief librarian had been abolished before becoming the Council of Nikaya, had deep eyes and spoke in a profound tone. At Mago's request, I explored our destiny in the Istvan galaxy in warp. The warp storm around Istvan is churning more violently, spreading westward and southward from the southwest side of the galactic disk, which is a dangerous sign. Everyone, Mago shouted. Even if what Garland said isn't true, it's still our only chance. Do you remember? Did he ever promise us anything? Kalag's nails ticked. Of course I remember, he told us to be patient. But now, what have we gotten in return? The corruption of the War Hounds. The massacre of the Angrons. No, Mago said calmly. We have found hope. Gulan told us that this is the opportunity we have been waiting for. We will break free from Angron's enslavement. Where are we going? Captra's nails hummed and vibrated. He defied orders and was declared a traitor by Angron and the Empire, and was wiped out like the Thousand Suns. Mago's cloak billowed, we will be reborn. We have received help from another Primarch. The great Vostroya King, the conqueror of the aliens, the eternal victor of the enemy of mankind, Lord Nimrod. Vers felt that as the High Gothic word, Nimrod, was uttered from Mago's mouth, the air on the deck seemed to resonate with the decorations they called the suppression spear, their layered maws spewing out high-frequency sound waves. The vibrating Butcher's nails ceased their trembling. Kalag's eyes lit up. Before Reaper reunited with Lord Nimrod, he was cruel and bloodthirsty, not much better than the current World Eaters. Lord Nimrod accepted them and reshaped them. How will Lord Nimrod help us? Captra asked, all eyes of the World Eaters fixed on Mago. Gulan told me to go to colonize New District, not Istvan, Mago said, revealing his well-thought-out plan. I will order all ships to change their logs to make it appear as if we have encountered a warp storm and have drifted to the nearby colonized New District. In this way, if the Empire investigates in the future, we will have a reason to respond. The only variable is Angren's rage. Mago smirked, but haven't we seen enough of Angren's rage and slaughter? Have you forgotten Jenna? Have you forgotten Buho, Tricardan, Sester's IV? Every word Mago utters evokes memories of the 11-day lottery. We now have a chance for redemption, we have received help from Lord Nimrod. Don't you dare to take a gamble and instead choose to live as monsters. I've been waiting for this day for a long time, Kalog said. Captra raised his arms and shouted, let's go to Kalonid. Klonid. Lord Nimrod. Quote. The roar echoed across the entire deck. Greater than 952 Alpha. The Dark Monarch, a gift from the Emperor to Nimrod, possesses both contradictory and peculiar advantages. Shadow of Sovereignty, Primarch Office. Arsena Dunn, holding data slate, said, My lord, the 4th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th chapters, a total of 109,500 people participated in the war. According to intelligence provided by Horus and War Council, the Gordian League is composed of human forces and 28 aliens from the Gordian system. The fleet of Chapter 11 encountered an enemy fleet in the Aveanida system. The Gordian League is composed of both humans and aliens, so the warship readings will inevitably differ, Nimrod instructed. Order all warships to activate the simulation module and falsify the Gordian League warship readings. Chapter 11, as the main force, launch the attack. I will follow your command. After the snow-white-haired Primarch's attendant stepped down, he rose from his throne. Nimrod walked towards his bedroom, avoiding everyone's gaze, and then stepped out to the nation of disorder. After ascending the throne in the 4th dimension, his spirituality spread, reaching the chapter master of the 3rd chapter. Bukayo Alshaven's spiritual sphere. My lord. Bukayo, whose entire body was covered in black armor, knelt in the black mist. You will dispatch warships in batches to Shanawi Sidek's galaxy, under the pretext of rotation and strengthening defenses, and responding to the Harud migration, to occupy Romulus-class star fort. During the Second Zaydan War, when he led his army to liberate Shana from siege, he considered seizing part of Shana during the Great Birthday celebration, which is why he deployed the important strategic asset, the Romulus-class star fort. Later, things went even more smoothly than he had anticipated. He used this opportunity to corrosion the future Shana. Tyrant Anacharis Scoria. Although Anacharis is vying for the position of Fabricator General, he is still unable to independently control the entire Forge world in Shana, a place rife with factions and separatism. Nimrod doesn't want just a part, but at least most of it, and ideally the whole thing. I will obey your will. Bukayo respectfully complied. At the same moment Nimrod sends Bukayo back to the real world, in the Aveanida galaxy. The flagship of Chapter 11, Dark Monarch. The razor-sharp predatory warships, illuminated by the eerie green light of the Green Star, traversed the void and plunged straight into the heart of the enemy ship. The moment it reached the core attack position, the synchronized towers on both sides simultaneously unleashed their blades in the darkness. A blazing plasma beam tore through the void, leaving an electrified trail as it crashed into the gray warship of the Gordian League. The massive hulls of the two battleships were slapped so hard that their shields created shimmering vortexes. An even more deadly attack followed, with Dark Monarch's unique weapon system unleashing a continuous barrage of golden energy beams. A beam of light ignited a blazing golden sun in the Aveanida galaxy, its radiance piercing through the thick armor as if tearing through darkness. The golden beam grew brighter and brighter, its intense, corona-like radiance engulfing the faint light emitted by the LED strips. Golden light emanated from the other side of the ship's hull, initially appearing as needle-like rays but gradually widening and expanding. The spreading light swirled together, and a golden vortex engulfed the gray behemoth. The silent explosion of fire waves crashed against the golden vortex, scattering into streaks of light that claimed the world of the Gordian warship and annihilated the scanning signal. Dark Monarch sped past the wreckage of the warship's engine, then suddenly spun like a blade, crashing between the two Gordian gray cruisers, immediately unleashing a golden energy beam of battleship-class firepower. The black blades churned through the enemy fleet, reaping the lives of gray warships while simultaneously scattering the Gordian League's formation. Amidst the chaos, black warships cut between enemy ships and unleashed a massive salvo of cannon fire at close range. A dense barrage of bullets rained down on the gray warship. The gray ship's engine exploded, and bursts of blue and white flames streaked across the gray hull like firecrackers. On the bridge of the Dark Monarch, Pablo gazed at the holographic image while taking in the torrent of data scrolling across the surrounding video screens. The Dark Monarch, a gift from the Emperor to Nimrod, is truly a peculiar warship. Its hull is equivalent to that of a strike cruiser, but it has the advantages of a smaller hull, the speed of a frigate, the agility of a destroyer, and, more remarkably, the firepower and defense of a higher-class battleship. Only technology from the dark ages of technology could possess so many contradictory yet unique advantages. Pablo knew that the Dark Monarch was retrieved by the Emperor himself from the permafrost of Ganymede. Nimrod accompanies the Emperor to Barbarous to help Mortarion overthrow the alien enslavement regime. In recognition of his contributions, the Emperor gifted the Dark Monarch to Nimrod, which he then assigned to Pell as the flagship of the 11th chapter. The Emperor really has a soft spot for Nimrod, he certainly knows how to please him. Father before Alpharius sent him to infiltrate the Order Shadow, he was granted access to intelligence on one of the Legion's most prized assets, the Order Shadow. Despite the fact that Order Shadow has always fought on the front lines of the Empire and participated in many major battles, it has always been shrouded in mystery. Their mysterious psychic powers are diverse and far exceed the scope of White Scars and Blood Angels, even surpassing Thousand Suns. The fact that nearly half of the Psychers, and that the total number exceeds that of Thousand Suns, is even more extraordinary. The Father personally investigated its origins and only confirmed one ability known as Griffin's Roar, which came from Mancora of the Ultima Segmentum, the world established by the Order Shadow Librarium. The Father further believed that Order Shadow might have hidden territories outside the Empire's sight, possibly as many as 30. He also believes that the Order Shadow may be weakening at a rate that is not as they appear, and their actual strength may exceed 260,000. Pablo felt that Order Shadow was somewhat similar to Alpha, and he didn't know how many Alphas his Legion had. This operation is also a rare opportunity for me. An opportunity to uncover the secrets of Order Shadow. Information is the most valued asset of Alpha. Possessing information that others cannot access allows one to advance within the Legion sequence. Pablo, update the starboard attack plan provided by Simulacrum Sanctum. Pablo acted without thinking, instinctively following the voice of Majesty. He quickly categorized the new strike plans provided by the Cogitator array into multiple data packets and uploaded them to Chapter Master's tactical network. Mentor of Disorder, Pell watched Pablo's every move. After receiving the report from Chapter, which confirmed that Pablo, who had demonstrated exceptional talent in commanding warships, was an Alpha infiltrator, he decided to deal with the problem himself. He promoted Pablo to the rank of Auxilia and kept him by his side. Pablo has gone from thinking at the beginning to completely following my will and instinctively obeying my orders. We're not far from completely subduing him. Greater than 953. How could I possibly be an Alpha? I am Order Shadow, I am the offspring of Nimrod. The Avianada Galaxy, on the eastern edge of the Milky Way. The flagship of Chapter 10, the Stinger rose. Semenio walked toward the High Chaplain's confessional. His gaze swept over the black armor warriors around him, and a smile crept across his face. He enjoyed fighting alongside his true brothers in arms. He had been away from this feeling for so long that he once thought he was an Alpha. After becoming Order Shadow, he was sent to infiltrate Alpha. Unexpectedly, not long ago, he was dispatched again to infiltrate Order Shadow. How could I possibly be an Alpha? I am Order Shadow, a descendant of Nimrod. The Father rescued Primarch from the clutches of the alien. Omega, every Primarch is extraordinary, but the Father is the most powerful and greatest. Semenio found it amusing that Alpha had chosen him, the Order Shadow, to infiltrate their own legion. He sought out the pastor under the guise of confession, revealing his identity, but was not trusted and underwent a series of mental examinations. Finally, he met High Chaplain Pat. Semenio's memory of that day was somewhat hazy. The sweet scent of mandrake candles filled the air, allowing him to shed his long-lost pretense. Pat's pale gold eyes were imprinted with the most vivid light in his memory. He was certain that his identity was recognized by the High Chaplain. He was accepted back into his legion and given a new mission as a spy. He needs to repay his legion with the skills he honed in Alpha. He intends to reveal vetted intelligence to Alpha, misleading Alpha at crucial points. As Semenio pondered, he arrived at the confessional chamber of the High Chaplain and raised his hand to press the rune. As the runes flickered, High Chaplain's resounding voice rang out. Come in. Amidst the pervasive cold mist, the cabin door slid open. Semenio entered the confessional. Pat's eyes narrowed, and a pale golden light fell upon him. Above his head, a pet hovered and flew, its bright eyes fixed on him. Semenio froze, as if the blood flowing through Superman's body had been frozen. Thump thump, thump thump, Thump thump. My heartbeat slowed down, and my thoughts became more relaxed in the pervasive fragrance. As the message edited, Pat's voice broke the silence, waking Semenyo from his sluggish thoughts. My lord, it's finished editing, Semenyo said, taking a combat dagger from his belt. After a series of skillful and precise movements, the combat dagger shattered into numerous parts. He extended his index finger, pulled out the encryption device from the handle, and then drew out strands of silver from the center of the blade. His eyes were focused on the silver threads, and tiny letters, finer than a hair, rapidly magnified in his eyes. After scanning it once, his hands moved swiftly, bending and arranging the silver threads into words. In Chapter 10, at Company 9, I discovered that 3 squads shared the same number as 3 other squads. Based on this, I speculate that the actual number of people in Chapter 10 exceeded the stated 25,600, and should actually be between 28,000 and 30,000, with the number of participants in this battle being approximately between 23,000 and 25,000. The encryption device received the information and compressed and dispersed it into irregular sounds, turning all the text into short, static noises. This is a skill I learned in Alpha, and I will use it to serve my true legion, Semenyo said, easing the pressure in his heart by revealing the secret. The next step is simple, I just need to enter a legitimate supply request. Request a supply of explosives, and even the holy oil to white bolter and chainsword. At the same time, I will also emit the classic noise, which will blend into the request as naturally as the noise of the ventilation fan in my cabin. What about the frequency band? Pat pressed. The frequency band engraved on the silver wire is one of hundreds of communication channels within the Empire. It is a commonly used channel by communications officers and will not arouse suspicion. My Alpha instructors told me that this is the beauty of Alpha, it is everywhere and has long been integrated into every aspect of the Empire. Dreamwalker, Pat stared at the Alpha in front of him. Semenyo, which is exactly what he has grasped in the other's mind. Dreamwalker continued to modify the dream, making Semenyo and the other 25 Alphas who had infiltrated Chapter 10 completely believe that they were the Order Shadow, and thus infiltrated the Alpha, according to orders. Following their orders, they revealed some unimportant information to Alpha's commander in exchange for the latter's trust. Pat instructed them that when conveying information, they should not differ in the number of numbers involved, but should still be within a certain range. In Alpha Legion, whenever the commander makes a decision based on intelligence, the issued commands will result in an error. Pat walked to the table and stared at the entire sophisticated device. Alpha is skilled in infiltration operations, they really know their stuff. Fortunately, the Legion's truly vital intelligence now relies on messengers. Pat knew that the messengers were primarily provided by the 4th chapter to the upper echelons of the Royal Court monk, and had previously covered the Earls and Viscounts of the Royal Court. The Counts and Viscounts of the Inner Court are also the core backbone of the Legion, controlling key positions within the Legion. However, this encryption device is easier to manufacture than a messenger and is more suitable for use in infiltration operations such as espionage. Semenyo's mastery of Alpha techniques will benefit the Legion. He now fully identifies himself as an Order Shadow, worshipping our Lord, and could even become a follower of the Black Emperor, and being a follower of our Lord distinguishes him from other heretics. As High Chaplain pondered, his gaze toward Semenyo softened yet burned intensely. Your loyalty has been tested, and your contributions have benefited the Legion. He thought about the first sermon he was preparing, for which he had already received the support of the Black Emperor. He will enlighten his brothers in battle, for he is the only true God in the world. He is the Black Emperor. He walks the earth as the Primarch, the Gene Father of the Order Shadow. I am preparing a presentation, and you have been selected to attend. I will notify you when it is time. Semenyo felt completely accepted by the High Chaplain and the Legion. He stood upright, his right fist striking his chest. Thank you for your trust, sir. Please let me know in advance, and I will listen carefully to your teachings. Go back and pass the message on, Pat instructed. Psionic Drake landed on his shoulder, tilting his head to look at Semenyo. Yes, sir. Semenyo bowed, quickly assembled his combat dagger, tucked it back into his waistband, and then turned and walked out of the confessional. The door slowly closed, Semenyo's eyes lit up, and he strode towards the elevator with a smile. He walked past the black armor warriors, exchanging greetings with them. It's great to be back in the Legion. Greater than 954R Order Shadow's hydrogen cylinders can actually be replaced by themselves. The main star of the Avianeta system, dark clouds shrouded the surface of the Earth, which was illuminated by a green star, and pressed down on it rapidly. Inside the gray fortress, a creature with a human face and a rat's body stood upright, its claws rapidly pulling on the control levers to maneuver anti-aircraft guns towards the sky. Their long tails emerged from their furry sides, coiled around the trigger, and scratched at their sharp teeth. Laser beams suddenly emerged from beneath the dark clouds, revealing the black machine only when the attack was launched. Inside the cockpit of a shadow-type Stormbird, the launch button is pulled. Alien hybrid, prepare to die. Inside the cockpit, Semenyo smiled. He looked down through the narrow field of vision. The twin laser cannons fired beams of laser light, which, together with the beams fired by the other Stormbirds in Chapter 10, formed a dense ocean. The crackling sound of the laser beam ionizing the air echoed through the air, piercing the dusty eyes of the human-faced rat. The beam pierced through the anti-aircraft gun, detonated the obese alien, and tore the human-faced rat in two. Our Stormbird technology far surpasses that of other Imperial legions. Only the Raven Guard seems to have similar vehicles, though they are smaller and carry fewer people. It's something to be proud of that we can achieve the same effect on larger vehicles. Although Semenyo knew that Raven Guard chose smaller vehicles more because of their tactics than technical limitations, the Legion's comprehensive and specialized expertise in Stormbird was still something he was very proud of. As he pondered, the Stormbird nose dipped and began to dive. Semenyo could clearly see the human-faced rat, its sharp door teeth bulging out. Slime dripped from above, his tail tightened, and he frantically pulled the trigger of the anti-aircraft gun. Dense barrages of bullets shot up sporadically, only to be immediately engulfed by the bright beams of light. The beams of light swept across the sky, crashing into the air defense positions. The beam of light hissed as it struck the human-faced rat, the blinding light spreading rapidly from the point of impact, blasting the alien along with the anti-aircraft weapons built by human allies into the sky. Prepare for landing and prepare for impact, the pilot's warning echoed in the cockpit. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. The landing gear crashed down, and Semenyo leapt out of the cabin, holding the Akakon plasma gun. As he landed, his eyepiece locked onto the first target. He raised his gun and fired a beam of light, like a sun flare, at the red rune. The beam of light struck an anti-aircraft gun that was still aimed at the air and attacking the troop transport ship. Boom! The human-faced rat and the steel metal vaporized into a cloud of hot air, which shot into the sky. Semenyo lowered his head slightly, scanning the mist spewing from the cooling pipes and exhaust pipes with his own light to confirm his perception. Even on the training field, after becoming familiar with the new weapons, the memories of infiltrating Alpha Legion remained imprinted in his mind. Each time he pulled the trigger, waves of heat from the cooling pipes and exhaust vents slapped against his armor, making him feel intensely hot. With each shot fired, the scorching sensation intensifies, enough to evaporate the moisture from the body of mortals using the Astartes model. A rapid burst of fire could roast an ordinary person into a dried-up corpse. But now, he only feels a slight warmth, like when he drinks nutritious porridge. I couldn't feel even the slightest increase in temperature from the gun barrel in my hands. Semenyo suppressed the marks left by 38 years of service, caught up with his Order Shadow brothers, and pulled the trigger at an unprecedented rate of fire. Plasma jets shot out, continuously raining down on the human-faced rat's positions. Each beam of light evaporates several, or even a dozen, of the clustered aliens. Semenyo's fingers suddenly paused, his arm trembled, and his muscles struggled between instinctive memory and new demands. In the past, the plasma gun he was equipped with in Alpha required a hydrogen tank replacement after firing 14 times. But more troublesome than the danger of overheating is that reloading requires prayer to get the hydrogen cylinders screwed in properly, because they are so unstable that they can easily spill or contaminate the plasma inlet. He had seen an Alpha attack using a faulty hydrogen tank, which exploded on the first shot. In the explosion that killed mortals, he was lucky enough to lose only an arm and a heart, but after replacing them with mechanical prosthetics, he continued to fight. Even removing the hydrogen cylinder itself is dangerous, as a small amount of residual plasma could leak from a broken seal or an error closed door valve. He had also seen another recruit whose 2 fingers were burned during training. Therefore, during combat, the loading and unloading of hydrogen cylinders by the Alpha were handled by the Tech Marine, while other legions relied more on the accompanying Tech Priest. They need to engage in prolonged binary prayer to complete the unloading and loading process. But when Semenyo returned to Order Shadow, he was told that they needed to complete it alone. Semenyo leapt into the trench, crouching low as he took a deep breath, his fingers stiffly reaching for the hydrogen cylinder. The moment he touched the hydrogen tank, through his gauntlet, he felt as if he were at the front of a line, receiving freshly cooked nutritious porridge and feeling the warmth of the bowl. His tense muscles relaxed slightly, and his fingers slowly but firmly unscrewed the hydrogen cylinder. Puff! The jet of hot air made the gauntlets slightly warm. Semenyo breathed a sigh of relief and put it back into the recycling bag at his waist. He then took out a hydrogen cylinder from his ammunition pouch and chanted the Vostonian hymn taught by Techmarine. Hydrogen bottle, you come from the furnace of Order Shadow. I am blessed by my father, King Vostroya, whose favor is always with me. Your flames will burn the enemy, but will not harm me. Semenyo finished reciting the unusually brief prayer without moving his fingers. Don't hurt me. A deep voice sounded from beside him. He saw another recruit from Ariga quickly screw on the hydrogen canister, and even poked his head out at the last moment, ready to attack. You tried it, on the training field. Semenyo quickly moved the hydrogen cylinder toward the plasma gun and screwed it on. It really works. My father looked after me. Semenyo, changing a hydrogen tank by himself for the first time, leapt out of the trench and pulled the trigger. The plasma beam shot out and detonated inside the human-faced rat. The rising steam came into view. Semenyo raised the Aka Khan plasma gun and strode forward. He found the bolters feel in the unstable plasma gun. A shell whistled through the air and struck the new recruits in front of them. Boom! With a deafening roar, the black armor shattered, and shards of terracotta armor, carrying burning arms, crashed down in front of Semenyo. He flipped the power switch with his thumb, switching the output power from standard mode to high power mode, while simultaneously pulling the trigger with his index finger. 100 times brighter than before, it shot out like a falling meteor, crashing into the gray chariot. Amidst the towering flames, the steel body melted, and the 4 human-faced rats were reduced to ashes. Semenyo felt the heat emanating from the exhaust port, a heat wave with a lower temperature than the standard mode of the Fury plasma gun he had used before. Our plasma guns are indeed much safer than those of the Alpha Legion, and their firing rate is more than 10 times faster. Reloading ammunition, more than 30 times faster. Moreover, it can actually be replaced by itself. Semenyo gathered his thoughts, switched back to standard mode, raised the warm Aka Khan plasma gun, and charged forward. His eyes narrowed sharply as he stared at the shadows in the distance. Greater than 955. Is it permissible for penitents to eat meat and drink blood? Semenyo's gaze swept across the shadows of the distant mountains, then suddenly his eyes narrowed as an Order shadow quietly appeared. The chainsword motor in his hand drove the saw teeth to spin rapidly, but strangely, it made no sound at all. He swiftly pounced on the last human-faced rat, and in the silence, the spinning saw teeth shredded the rat into pieces. When flesh touched the fangs, it was immediately repelled, as if an invisible barrier enveloped the fangs. Shadow Scorpion. Semenyo calmly replaced the hydrogen tank, raised the Aka Khan plasma gun, and continued firing, his eyes fixed on the rear of the battle line. He had heard of their existence while he was still lurking in the Alpha, and their abilities in this regard were as excellent as those of the Raven Guard and the Night Lords. Now, he finally has the chance to witness their battle. Semenyo's eyes were fixed on the last row of troops, not missing a single subtle change. However, the Shadow Scorpion emerged from the shadows in a way that was beyond his sensory perception. They emerged silently and swiftly from the shadows behind the human-faced rats. Their ferocious attack dismembered the last row of enemies, without even the neighboring row in front noticing. Semenyo stared wide-eyed, trying to keep track of the Shadow Scorpion's movements. But their massive bodies, along with their black armor, disappeared from sight. Neither the internal binoculars of their powered helmets nor his eyes could detect their movements. Immediately, they reappeared abruptly, wielding their sharp blades and slashing down. Psychic power. Semenyo recalled the message delivered by the Alpha that had infiltrated Raven Guard. Lord Corvus Corax often appears suddenly, either on the battlefield or in peacetime, taking away some Raven Guards. The infiltrators had investigated and discovered that a Raven Guard had disappeared for 3 seconds in the sight of many of his combat comrades shortly before being taken away, while on the training deck. Could it be that Order Shadow also relies on similar psychic powers to hide in the shadows? While Semenyo was pondering, he didn't stop. He blended into the rhythm of the Order shadows around him, raised his gun and fired, then changed the hydrogen tank himself without hesitation. He abandoned the habits he had developed as an Alpha and forged his first new habit upon returning to the Legion. Semenyo's gaze was simultaneously fixed on the enemy runes on the tactical display and in the distance, closing the distance between himself and the shadows. 5.9 kilometers, 4.7 kilometers, 3.8 kilometers. It wasn't until the distance closed to 1.6 kilometers that the enemy realized they were surrounded from both sides. Dozens of human-faced rats frantically wrapped their weapons with their tails, then lay down on their knees and sprang up again. As the human-faced rat hopped about on its 4 paws, its green eyes were filled with the sight of countless shattered corpses and endless blood. A sharp cry suddenly rang out, and the human-faced rats all turned their heads and then ran away. Hundreds of them even loosened their weapons and leapt even faster. Other aliens followed suit, hurling the weapons the Gordians had forged for them with their curled tails as they sped away. Semenyo suddenly stopped in his tracks. He saw hundreds of his fellow fighters put away their plasma guns and pull out strangely shaped combat daggers. The dagger's handle was carved from bone, with a skull faintly visible at the top. They lowered their center of gravity and strode quickly. Ta-da! The First Order shadow caught up with the enemy, raised his left arm, and grabbed the humanoid head covered in thick, downy hair. The human-faced rat was lifted up, its tail tucked tightly into itself, and then lashed out like a whip across the Mark IV power armor. Bump! A dent appeared in the black armor as Order Shadow's blade swung down at the same time. PFF'd. He beheaded the enemy with a single stroke and then hung the head on the spiked belt around his abdomen. Semenyo's gaze sharpened as the Order Shadow used the back of his combat dagger, stained with blood, to carve a symbol onto his helmet. He then hung the corpse of the human-faced rat on the hook on his left hip. Semenyo frowned, and he hesitated as he thought to himself. This behavior seemed similar to that of world eaters. Is this permitted? He watched with suspicion as hundreds of Order Shadows had alien heads hanging from their bellies and 3 human-faced rats hanging from their waists, their long tails trailing on the ground and kicking up dust. Semenyo watched silently as they gathered together and lit a bonfire. They cut the arteries of the human-faced rat and poured its blood into a basin. They skillfully soaked the fur in hot water like chefs, and with a flick of their wrists, used their combat daggers to remove the thick down. They used spikes to pierce the severed neck of the human-faced rat, strung the entire corpse together, and placed it on a rack above the campfire to roast it. Semenyo quietly followed his fellow fighter, queuing up to receive his own nutritional paste. He gazed at another camp a kilometer away, where hundreds of Order Shadows held bowls high and drank the blood from their cups. Then, while chanting something, he picked up a skewer of human-faced rat meat that smelled delicious and began to eat heartily. Semenyo felt a slight weight in his hand. He silently carried the nutritious porridge to the side and sat down in the shadow of the fort ruins. You seem to be troubled by something. Semenyo looked in the direction of the sound and saw High Chaplain Pat appeared beside him without his noticing. His pupils narrowed, taking on a strange pale gold hue. They eat alien flesh and drink alien blood, they look very savage. Is this allowed? They are a special group within the chapter, they call themselves Pentents. Pat looked in the direction Semenyo was looking. Each of them would carry a finely crafted combat knife, and after a victory, they would cut off the enemy's skull as a trophy. Only those who personally behead their enemies are allowed to become members of the penitent. They would drink the enemy's blood and eat the enemy's flesh after the battle. Pat withdrew his gaze and fixed it on Semenyo. Our Lord once said, it is better to guide than to block. He allows the existence of penitents, but restricts them to the realm of order, meaning that rituals can only be performed on aliens. That's why the penitents have taken root on the eastern edge of the galaxy, where the endless array of aliens can satisfy their cultural customs. Pat knew that the Black Emperor's actions were to satisfy the faceless ones of the Second Legion's craving for the Gene Father. He neither indulged nor suppressed them, but instead set a boundary that allowed them to satisfy their genetic desires without losing control. Monitoring their subconscious is also the responsibility of the Dreamwalkers. Semenyo's eyes were deep. At least, the penitents prey as aliens, not friendly forces. He recalled the slash he wielded in Alpha, especially Hydra 42, which destroyed the 670th Expeditionary Fleet, slaughtered the Imperial Army including 52,000 Geno, and covered up secret operations. 956 Angron, my useless offspring, have they run away? 005, M31, Order Shadow, is fighting in the eastern part of the galaxy, eliminating alien strongholds one by one on the periphery of the Gordian League's core system. In the Istvan galaxy, the vengeful spirit's long, flat, spear-like vessel pierced the physical universe from warp, its colorful and ever-changing dissipating energy resembling a dazzling firework display. The pearl-white paint of Luna Wolves has been replaced by the metallic gray-green of Sons of Horus. The Horus Eye atop the bow gazed ahead, watching the 3 fleets that had sped in from the void. The monotonous, dark gray warship ruthlessly cut into physical space. The only decoration on the entire warship's exterior is its brass skull emblem. Every warship in Endurance is an unpolished dark gray, the Death Guard never uses unnecessary embellishments. On the other side is the Pride of the Emperor, a magnificent purple-gold structure that resembles a space palace more than a warship. Each of the Emperor's children warships is lavishly decorated, resembling a nobleman's magnificent carriage, guarding the king. The saber-like Conqueror finally broke away from the warp. The blue and white painted warship had a rigid and robust hull. Boom! The bloodborne giant axe slammed onto the floor of the Conqueror hull. Angron crouched on the ground like a wild beast, yet his body was still taller than Khan's. His scarred face exuded ferocity, his eyes sunken deep within the crisscrossing, menacing scars. He was clad in ancient-style bronze armor, with thick metal plates covering the chainmail. The two chainsaw axes, carried crossed on the back, now belonged to Bloodfather. He tilted his head and stared at Khan in front of him. "I didn't hear you clearly, could you say it again?" Click. The deck cracked like a spiderweb, and Khan's boots became embedded in the shards. 49 companies, including Mago's 18th company, Kalag's 21st company, and Captra's 37th company, have lost contact. The 18th company has not sent any messages to the Legion for 3 months. Angron stood up, his shadow looming over Khan's body. "You once told me that they were my sons, my world eaters. Now, 49 companies have vanished, and my 49,000 useless offspring have run away. Ever since the Empire discovered the Istvan system, its southwest has been haunted by the warp storm." Primarch's attendant Khan straightened his chest. Then, boom, Khan caught a glimpse of a dark shadow out of the corner of his eye, and was immediately sent flying, rolling on the ground and leaving dents. Outside the doorway, the company commanders of World Eaters became agitated by the roars and crashes coming from inside. Dreger, the company commander of the 9th Company, raised his hand and pressed down. "Khan can handle it." He had already guessed that Mago and his men must have led their company away from Jean Father's command. Chief Apothecary Galan Surik had promised them to be patient, and that hope would eventually come. Now is the moment when the hope that Garland spoke of will arrive. "They didn't notify me. Should I leave too?" Dreger glanced around at the World Eaters, nails embedded deep in their skulls. Although he organized the rally with Mago and others, he held different views from the other participants. The root cause of the noble war hounds' downfall was not Angron and Butcher's nails, but the Emperor's attitude toward his father. He forcibly took his father away from his slave brothers in Nuceria and forced him to take command of the Legion. Regardless of whose fault it is, the World Eaters, who are addicted to killing, must be reshaped. He had assumed that the hope Garin spoke of was for Legion champion Khan, just as he had decided to prevent Khan from meeting Angron and taking over the Legion commander position. But he is now beginning to doubt whether Khan is truly the one who can lead them to rebuild Warhounds. Khan had been with Angron for too long. He was the first to voluntarily undergo Butcher's Nails transformation, and he was as bloodthirsty as his father. If Angron is a bloodthirsty beast, then Khan has become his fangs. Where did Mago and the others go? What exactly is the hope that Garland speaks of? As Dreger pondered, Khan rose from the ground, blood dripping from his forehead. "Mago and the others won't run away, I will continue to contact them. I promise I will get in touch with them and bring them to you." "You really are stubborn," Angron said coldly, the nail on the back of his head buzzing. "I will give them another chance. They will be punished for being late, I sentence them to 11 slaps." He recalled Mago's courageous but futile resistance in Jenna orbit. Mago sees those useless recruits as the future. This time, I want him to kill all the recruits with his own hands and strangle his own future. This will be a delicious appetizer before the killing feast. "World Eaters will obey your orders," Khan said. His communicator suddenly buzzed, and after listening to it, he spoke to his father. "Warmaster Squire Malahurst has sent a message requesting that you, Fulgrim, and Mortarion travel to Vengeful Spirit to discuss the plan to punish Istvan III. Angron drew the Bloodchild's great axe and carried it on his back along with Bloodfather. "Let's go see our Warmaster." Angron, his face clouded with gloom, led Khan into the Wolf God Council of the Vengeful Spirit. He glanced at the Fulgrim and Emperor's children, clad in purple and gold armor, emerging from another archway. Under the glow of the lumen lamps, it shimmered with a repulsive golden light, just as repulsive as that father. Angron turned his head to look at the line emerging from another arched doorway. The dull armor, devoid of any paint, features only the brass skull emblem of the Death Guard etched on the shoulder armor. Mortarion's pale, sickly face was covered in pockmarks, except for his bald, smooth head, and a thick neck shield that covered his mouth and throat. Warmaster rose from his high throne and strode toward the center of the court. He opened his arms. "Fulgrim, Mortarion, Angron. Welcome, my brothers." Warmaster received us as he always has. "Are you like that King of Terra?" Horus Leperkle glanced at Nathaniel Garo, the company commander of the 7th Company standing next to Mortarion, and said calmly. "Angron, it's great to have you here. How could I possibly miss this wonderful meeting?" Angron roared, spewing forth a fiery aura like a volcano about to erupt. "Warmaster, I salute you." Fulgrim's silver hair fluttered. Horus's gaze swept over the hammer and ornate sword at his waist, and his brow furrowed slightly. His brow relaxed. "Thank you for attending. Our brother Mortarion has also arrived. Everyone's here," he gestured to Malahurst. The light in the hall dimmed rapidly, and a bright sphere hung from the ceiling, hovering above his head. This is Istvan III, and here we will make history. 957 Horus. Angron is unable to command his offspring. Vengeful spirit, the wolf god's counsel. Horus Lupercal raised his arms as if cradling an increasingly clear sphere. 13 years ago, my brother Corvus Corax led the 27th expedition to bring this world under our control. He didn't do a good job. Angron smiled dismissively. Obviously not. 4 months ago, I received a distress signal from Istvan, Mortarion said. Our ability to receive it was entirely accidental. A supply ship, en route to Actulin to rendezvous with the fleet, happened to detach from warp for temporary repairs. Considering the degree of signal attenuation and the time it took for the signal to reach me through all the layers of reporting, it must have been sent at least 2 years ago. I reviewed the War Council's report, Raven Guard, which stated that they had crushed the radical resistance in the Raitas Mountains. As he spoke, Warmaster's servant Malahurst switched to the corresponding region. A mountainous region on the northern continent of Istvan III glowed red. Mortarion nodded to Malahurst. The local colonies have maintained a highly cohesive industrialized society for thousands of years, so the industrial system and population within the system are crucial to the empire. When my father led us to make the decision, he entrusted the task to Corax in order to avoid excessive damage and prohibited the use of overwhelming force. But it is clear that the influence of aliens and psionic powers has always been present, and the rebels are primarily motivated by their religious beliefs. Mortarion said with disgust, they used to be a marginalized sect, long suppressed by the mainstream society when they surrendered. Due to the dual need for administration and the use of force to maintain rule, Major Val du Sprawl of the 11th Infantry Regiment of Lastland was active as a politician in the Ultima Segmentum, and in order to fulfill his military and political experience, he was appointed planetary governor. He started off doing quite well, until he took action against the War Singers. Mortarion waved his hand, and the Warmaster servant shook his staff. The holographic projection spheres spread out in a sheet-like shape, transforming into a giant screen that floats in midair. A scene vaguely emerges. A woman, her face covered in sweat, breathing heavily, is in a small space surrounded by stone walls. The insignia on her collar is that of the 27th Expeditionary Fleet. Commander, the Lord beside Fulgrim Eidolon said. Amidst the chaotic background of gunfire and shouts, the woman yelled, "This is a riot. War Singers reject everything. We tried to help them integrate into the Empire, we thought they were just primitive." Static electricity crackled. Superstition, but it's not like that at all, it's all true. Governor Spur has gone mad, all those War Singers support him. I need help, please, send people to rescue us quickly. The scene abruptly ended, Horus's expression turning solemn. Brother, thanks for the important news. Malahurst shook his control stick, and the holographic projection expanded, transforming into Istvan I. Horus raised his hand. The cultural and religious center of Istvan is located here. The image zooms in rapidly to focus on a city located in the northern part of the planet, standing on a vast plain at the foot of a majestic mountain range. Holy Song City is the location where the distress signal was sent, and it is also the location of Spral's residence. The assault forces of each corps will be responsible for capturing a range of strategic objectives. The enemy forces on the west side of the city are stationed in fortifications. The western edge of the city is highlighted, with a crisscrossing network of bunkers and trenches. Mortarion walked to his side. Warmaster, this is the natural battlefield for the Death Guard. The Singer's Palace is the governor's residence, and Spur is most likely hiding there. The holographic image shifts to reveal a spectacular arcade and tower, with numerous labyrinthine ancillary buildings surrounding a magnificent dome. Fulgrim stared at the magnificent building, which resembled a jeweled brooch embedded in the city of Holy Song. The Emperor's children will be responsible for conquering it. The plazas adjacent to the palace were the main hubs of the city's transportation network, through which the rebels could launch rapid attacks. The World Eaters were responsible for conquering them and advancing outwards to occupy the entire city. Angron nodded in satisfaction. I like this killing field. The riots in Holy Song City were driven by religion, and Demon Howl Castle is the religious center of this planet. The final shot focuses on the complex architectural complex, revealing a layered terrain that could conceal numerous dangerous areas. The Sons of Horus will be responsible for conquering it and destroying the heart of the ancient pagan faith. Once the monitoring station on the 7th planet outside the Istvan system is destroyed, blinding the rebels, we can launch our attack. The first wave of assault troops was deployed via airdrop pods and gunboats, with the second wave of troops ready to provide support as needed. Seeing that each legion understood their mission, Horus lowered his stern expression and a smile appeared on his face. Now, please go outside and get ready. We brothers still have things to talk about. The chief pastor of the word-bearers, Erebus, and his staff all obeyed the order and left through different archways. Horus returned to his throne and took out 3 heavy parchment books. As he walked toward the 3 Primarch brothers, a smile played on his lips. Leman Russ gave me a book, Codex Omega, which records the valuable experience of the Wolf Pack in their war against the Thousand Sons in Prospero. He used that war to defeat a fearsome enemy known as the Thousand Sons, and also weakened Leman Russ's Wolf Pack. The only failed plan was the pointless sacrifice of Boros Kun and his nearly 5,000 warriors, which did not bring him back the assets he needed. Thousand Sons cares more about ordinary people and psychers than I expected. Horus believed that the Thousand Sons would never save civilians when they were attacked and the world was burned. Unexpectedly, Hathor personally led the Scarab Terminators, Dreadnought Monks, and thousands of warriors deep into the fallen territory to rescue civilians. He gathered his thoughts and returned to the unexpected joy in his hand. Experience of Astartes clashing with Astartes. For the sake of our grand ambitions, we will have no choice but to fight to the death with our brother legions. This valuable experience has been secretly shared within the warrior society, and the sons of Horus are ready for it. I hope you will also complete your preparations as soon as possible. Mortarion was the first to accept the heavy parchment book, saying, I will make good use of it. Fulgrim followed closely behind, quickly flipping through the pages. Upon seeing the crudely drawn, unartistic battle scenes, he closed the book in disgust. Angron slapped the book Horus offered him away, saying, Leman Russ is nothing but a defeated opponent of mine. Killing doesn't need anyone to teach it, world eaters are born warriors. Horus remained calm, knowing that Leman Russ had admonished Angron on his father's orders. He found Angron in Marco, and a brief but fierce battle broke out between the 2 legions. Angron defeated Leman Russ, but was surrounded by the Wolf Guards. Although Angron puts himself in danger due to his bloodlust and rage, he is undoubtedly a powerful warrior. He needs Anglo's strength to defeat Nimrod and Sanguinius. Of course, he would prefer Sanguinius to receive gifts from the Chaos allies in Sinas. Nimrod, on the other hand, has fallen into the trap he himself has set, hoping that Omega can slow him down. Horus looked at his 3 brothers and said, I hope you have brought the sacrifice that opened the curtain on this great cause to Istvan. Of course, Mortarion said first. Those who do not steadfastly follow my sons will have their resilient bodies destroyed. Fulgrim didn't speak, but a voice suddenly echoed in his mind. You know, sacrifice is necessary for our great cause of perfection, for you and Warmaster. He sighed, I grieve that they cannot achieve perfection, the magnificent Istvan will be their grand tomb. I will handle them, Angron concluded. Horus frowned. What do you mean by, you'll handle this? Tell me, Angron, did you not prepare as I ordered? Khan told me that he couldn't contact my cowardly offspring, perhaps they had escaped, or perhaps they had died in the storm. Fulgrim glanced at Angron, you don't care about the lives of world eaters, so naturally they won't respect you. You, Horus raised an eyebrow. Angron was actually unable to command his offspring to be late at such an important moment. He was about to berate Angron for his incompetence, but then he forcibly suppressed his anger. After pondering silently for a long time, he said, the arrow is on the string, and it must be released. Continue with the plan, we'll deal with them together. At the same moment Horus ended his secret meeting, the Emperor's children, who were attacking the cruiser Andronius, were also holding a meeting. 958 I have decided to leave with Lucius. In the conference room of the Andronius, Lucius, the company commander of the Emperor's Children, 13th Company, stands in the center of the room. Lord Commander Vespasian, brothers, company commanders. I have some dangerous news to tell you. Warmaster has betrayed the Emperor. What? Saul Tarvitz, the company commander of the 10th Company, strode forward. Lucius, do you know what you're saying? Have you forgotten that on Murder Planet, Warmaster led us to defeat the giant spider monster? He couldn't possibly betray me. Lucius smiled slightly. First of all, I believe that Lord Nimrod is the one who decides the outcome of the battle. My lord, forgive me for mentioning your name. He prayed silently in repentance, and then said. He was the first to cross the equator, storm the giant spider monster's lair, and take care of those thorn trees. Secondly, I want to tell you that most of the warships of the 4 legions are preparing for orbital bombardment, targeting Astartes, which have been sent to the surface to carry out assault missions. Those deemed disloyal to the traitorous Primarch who will undermine the Warmaster rebellion. Tower Wiz coldly questioned, I don't believe you. Do you have any evidence? Of course, you can investigate, Lucius said calmly, following the revelation the Black Emperor had implanted in his mind. I know you and Garo of Death Guard are honorary brothers. You can go and verify with him which assault teams have been dispatched to the surface. If he hadn't just been cured by Bear and needed time to adapt to his mechanical prosthetics, he would definitely have been sent to the surface as well. You can also go to Father's flagship and investigate whether they are preparing for orbital bombardment. Lucius shrugged. You'll find that we didn't have an orbital bombardment plan before we landed. So, it's clear that we're also within the bombing range. I can also tell you that among the weapons used in orbital bombing are viral bombs containing the life-devouring virus. The life-eating virus. It can destroy all life forms. Tower Wiz's eyes widened. How could Father allow this to happen? Lucius shook his head. My father changed after he drew that sword. He is no longer a proud phoenix, but a fallen gray bird. Should I remind you to visit our chief apothecary Fabius Bayer's laboratory and see the blasphemous experiments he conducts? Do we still need to dissect Eidolon's body and see what he looks like? My father once tried to kill me, Vespasian said for the first time. What? Tower Wiz stared at him, asking incredulously. I'm pretty sure. Vespasian said dejectedly. A Kurduana appeared just in time and stopped him. But he also believes that my father did want to kill me, at least at that moment. Why? Tower Wiz pressed. Vespasian recalled the evil painting, and a cold, sharp sword flashed through his mind. Because I refused to be transformed into the perfect version of him. I also refused to let my warrior use the medicine provided by Bear. Just because of that? Tower Wiz asked incredulously. Vespasian nodded. I'm willing to believe Lucius. Because, Father, Eidolon, and Bear, they dragged the Emperor's children into the depravity of Abyss. I have decided to leave with Lucius to go to Terra and report to the Emperor and the Sigillite. Tower Wiz paused for a moment, his gaze sweeping over Vespasian's back, where he saw the company commander's underlord commander standing firmly behind him. He recalled Lord Eidolon's changes and had to accept the facts Lucius had stated. I need time to investigate and confirm whether what you're saying is true. Lucius recalled the Black Emperor's instructions. Of course you have time. But the investigation must be conducted in secrecy. We will act before the airdrop order is carried out and disengage from the fleet. We will start the engine in advance and set the route to Mandeville Point, Vespasian emphasized. I will issue a warning to all warships, and then we will disengage from the fleet. Tower Wiz felt his two hearts pounding heavily. I understand. He strode out of the conference room. Vespasian watched his retreating figure and asked Lucius a question. Isn't Ikerduana coming with us? He still wants to save his father and the Legion. Lucius pursed his lips. I don't think he can succeed. Vespasian shook his head. Ikerduana had pleaded with his father to dissuade him, but to no avail. Even Fulgrim's beloved eldest son could not persuade him to leave the depraved abyss. He walked out of the conference room with Lucius and looked at the gallery that ran across the keel of the Andronius. Vespasian walked up to a statue and spoke to Lucius. Do you know why Father liked to use this warship as his second flagship? Because of the statue. Lucius asked uncertainly. He can find inspiration here from the fallen heroes of the Legion. This warship once belonged to the owner of the statue before you. His name is Ilios. He was a great warrior who fought alongside his father against the enemy tribes on Chemos before we found him. He and his father together transformed our home planet from a hell of death and suffering into a beautiful world full of culture and knowledge. Vespasian gazed at the lifelike statue. I have great respect for him and am honored to have inherited his warship. Now, we will carry the glorious spirit of the Legion and depart with the honor our father abandoned. I will rebuild the Legion and continue the glory of the Emperor's children. Lucius looked at Vespasian's declarative speech and shook his head slightly. Vespasian, you still don't understand. The son of the false emperor has nothing to be proud of, only the Black Emperor is the true god. He is the only being we should serve. At the same moment Vespasian and Lucius were talking, Tower Wiz opened a communication channel and switched to the same channel as Garo. Nathaniel. Thor, it's so good to hear your voice, Garo replied. Me too, Tower Wiz asked eagerly. Tell me, what kinds of death guards are sent to the surface for assault missions? Thor, I'm sorry, I haven't recovered yet. Apothecary told me that my body is not up to the requirements for combat, so you won't be able to see me on the surface, Garo said dejectedly. As the company commander of the 7th Company, who was granted the title of Combat Company Commander by the Emperor, being absent from battle was disheartening. You will win even more battle honors in the future, Tower Wiz comforted him. Now, tell me quickly, which troops have been sent to the ground? This is important. 959 Third update, seeking monthly tickets, Vespasian's warning of betrayal before landing. Lord Commander, the banquet hall of the Eidolon's flagship, the Beander. The Emperor's children were extremely confident in their perfect war skills, and celebrating victory before battle is a long-established tradition. But the banquets grew longer and longer, almost as long as battles. Tower Wiz looked around. The other company commanders were immersed in wine in their golden goblets, their cheers echoing within the alabaster walls. Apart from him and Lucius, no one else was selected to participate in the ground battle. He recalled the words of his sworn brother Nathaniel Garo, and the unusual battle arrangement of the 4 legions. Instead of deploying troops in the traditional company-based manner, Warmaster drew out squads and assembled warriors from many different companies into an army. Even more unusual was that not a single one of them came from Eidolon's inner circle. The absence of all of Warrior's trusted confidants during the orbital assault was an unprecedented and serious offense, but Eidolon showed no displeasure whatsoever. He was even willing to give up the opportunity to lead spearhead troops and demonstrate perfect command skills, and appointing someone else as commander was unheard of. He accepted the toasts from the company commanders with a smile on his face, drinking the bright red grape wine to his heart's content. The liquid sloshed around Towerwiz's vision, somewhat blinding him. Towerwiz couldn't help but look at Lucius, recalling what he had said not long ago. Warmaster and his father were going to carry out a great purge in Istvan III. A small team fights side by side, sharing life and death, and maintaining a consistent stance. Joining the warrior society, advocated by Warmaster, also uses the squad as the most basic unit. However, there may be different voices within the company. Could it really be cleaning? He put down his cup and stood up from the table. Time is running out, he must find out the truth. Towerwiz, are you leaving already? Eidolon stared at him. My lord, I still have many things to take care of before launching the orbital assault. Of course, we cautious Towerwiz brothers always have a lot to prepare. Lucius knew that Towerwiz was going to verify his words. Eidolon stared at Towerwiz, his voice slightly sharp. Towerwiz, you really need to be prepared. Go. Towerwiz bowed to Eidolon before walking out of the banquet hall through the large golden door. Towerwiz quickly entered the elevator and then pressed the button to go to the artillery deck. His heart was pumping so fast that the elevator's rapid descent seemed unusually slow. Bang! Before the elevator had even come to a complete stop, Towerwiz had already strode out. The laborers bowed in respect when they saw the purple-gold giant. The many magnificent buildings here, far from the warships, were rarely visited by Emperor's children. Towerwiz walks onto the covered bridge and looks down at the steel frame below. Prepare to load. With that mechanical voice coming from the loudspeaker, Towerwiz stared at the iron ladder at the end of the steel frame on the deck below. A mechanical crane arm passes through the blast-proof door and pulls up a tank-sized warhead. The gunners and loaders pulled hard on the massive control lever, which in turn pulled the heavy iron chains. He watched as the tech priests tuned their weapons. They were really preparing for orbital bombardment. Towerwiz, recalling the battle plan, grew increasingly uneasy. Emperor's Children has always been known for developing rigorous and well-organized battle plans before each battle in order to achieve perfect combat results. If there are bombing plans, they should be announced and discussed. Towerwiz suddenly emerged from the darkness and strode forward. He had only taken a few steps when he ran into a technician dressed in a red robe. 2 beams of green light shone from his mask, striking Towerwiz's armor. Company commander, is there a problem? No. Towerwiz calmed himself down. I'm just here to make sure everything goes according to plan. What type of warhead are you using? Are you prepared to proceed according to the scheduled time? Of course, Company Commander, Tech Priest said. All artillery pieces have been loaded with airburst warheads carrying virus-infected explosives. Lucius is telling the truth. Towerwiz was struck dumb. We are following the operational orders exactly and will launch before the second wave of the offensive. Before the second wave, Towerwiz's stomach churned with the remnants of wine, making him feel nauseous. The first wave of assault troops was within bombing range, and I was also selected for the first wave. The targets of the bombing included me. Towerwiz knew that releasing a sufficient number of viral bombs to destroy the entire planet would require the cooperation of many warships. The extermination weapon, carrying the life-devouring virus, can only be obeyed by the Warmaster's orders, which command the Adeptus Mechanicus personnel of each fleet. In other words, this was not an independent act by the Emperor's Children. The command must come from Warmaster. Towerwiz felt dizzy at the thought that nearly a quarter of Emperor's Children were included in the cleaning program. Fulgrim, Eidolon, Horus, why did you do this? I must warn them. I must tell Nathaniel. Company Commander, is everything all right? Tech Priest stared at Emperor's Children, whose legs were trembling slightly, his mechanical tentacles swaying. That's normal. You can return to your post now. Towerwiz practically ran back to the elevator, slammed his fist on the keyboard, and at the last moment flicked his fingers to lightly press the operation keys. Click. The button was pressed down to the bottom, and the machine spirit sensed its anger. The ancient chains spun wildly. Tower Wiz made his way to the flight deck at an incredibly fast, almost imperceptible speed. He shouted to his pilots, "Prepare for takeoff." "Where to?" "Eisenstein, I'm going to see Nathaniel." Thunderhawk gunship leapt from the Beander at high speed without performing a final pre-flight check. Tower Wiz quickly switched communication channels and shouted, "Nathaniel, this is Thor." "Sor, you sound rushed. What happened?" "The Warmaster has betrayed us, and so have our fathers," Tower Wiz shouted. "We have been betrayed. The fleet will bombard the planet's surface with viral bombs after the first assault troops land." "By the Emperor, this sounds absolutely insane," Gallo exclaimed. "Nathaniel, I know this sounds absurd, but you are my honorary brother, and you have to believe me." Tower Wiz slammed his right fist into his chest. "I swear on my life that I have never lied to you." "Thor, I'm not sure," Garo said hesitantly. Sizzle. A powerful electrical current suddenly rang out across all communication channels. "I am the commander of Emperor's children, Vespasian. I hereby issue a warning to all the emperors of the legions. The Warmaster has betrayed the Empire, and Mortarion and Angron have become his lackeys." Vespasian paused for a moment, then said, "My father, Fulgrim, has also fallen. All warriors selected to be parachuted into Istvan III, you are all targets for purge. I swear by my life, by all the honors I have earned, and by my loyalty to the Emperor, that all of the above is true. From this day forward, you will fight for survival and honor, and for the Emperor." Tower Wiz jerked to his feet and lunged toward the narrow window. He saw rows of purple-gold warships, their engines gleaming with blinding light, suddenly accelerating. The Andronius's port and starboard guns simultaneously unleashed a dense barrage of bullets, slamming into the pride of the Emperor and the Beander. Vespasian and Lucius began their operation. They were to issue a warning before landing and evacuate Istvan. He gripped the communicator tightly. "Nathaniel, can you hear me? I heard it, but I still find it hard to believe. You have to believe, as Vespasian said, that our time is running out. Prepare for the jump, I'll be on your ship shortly. Greater than 960 Mortarion, Fulgrim, your loyal offspring have all defected. Vengeful spirit, the Wolf God's Council." Horus Lupercal abruptly rose from his throne, the communication channel continuously broadcasting, "Emperor's children, the Lord's command." The accusations from Vespasian's Warmaster, Mortarion and Angron, "Our father Fulgrim has betrayed us." Every warrior in the first wave of assault troops was a target for cleansing, shells carrying virus-laden warheads. Lucius, the company commander of the 13th Company of Emperor's Children, and Saul Tarvitz, the company commander of the 10th Company, joined the communications channel one after the other. Malahurst, Primarch's attendant, emerged from the shadows. "Warmaster, I need you to find out what happened right now. Also, broadcast my speech across all channels to drown out the voices of the Imperial traitors." Malahurst quickly issued commands to the communicator and then spoke to report. "Everything is ready, you may now issue the declaration." "Soldiers of the Empire, I am Warmaster," Horus said in a low voice. "I am enraged by the accusations of Vespasian and others. Am I not the Emperor's appointed Warmaster, commanding all the warriors of the Emperor of mankind? I have put in my utmost effort. Is there anything that violates the Imperial truth?" He said coldly, "I know that the loyal Imperial soldiers are full of doubts about unfounded accusations. I was once like that, and I thought that my order to send a small team into battle based on the situation in Istvan was misunderstood. But I now know the reason. Vespasian, Lucius, and Saul Tarvitz, they colluded with Istvan III's war singers. In the name of Warmaster, I declare them traitors to the Empire." Horus looked at Malahurst, and after Primarch's attendant nodded in response, he continued. "Their warships have been marked as enemy ships. All nearby Imperial warships are to immediately plan interception routes and launch relentless orbital strikes. At the same time, to prevent Istvan's rebels from using the time gained by the rebellion to consolidate their offensive, I order the first wave of assault troops to immediately carry out the airdrop." After Horus hung up the communication, he instructed Fulgrim to issue the same statement. "In my name I ask him, is he like Angron, unable to command his own offspring?" "Yes, sir." Primarch's attendant immediately carried out Warmaster's command. To further confirm the situation, which attack units were carrying out orders, which betrayed me, and which are still hesitating. As Horus spoke, he strode toward the Wolf God's Council. "Lupercal, Warmaster." Horus smiled and gestured to the excited officers. His presence roused those unaware of his grand plans to their work, and the bridge quickly returned to operation. He proceeded to the strategy room, where two members of the Council of Four Kings, Ezekiel Abaddon and Horus Asimandaman, stood respectfully. Another Council of Four Kings member, Tower Rick Torgadon, was chosen by him to be the commander of the first wave of the Sons of Horus assault team. Garviel Loken served as his deputy. "How are we doing?" Horus asked, looking at the two of them. "Tower Rick and Gaviel just sent me their inquiries, and Isaacel and I reassured them," Asimandamon said. "The 2,000 sons of Horus they led have launched an orbital assault as planned." Horus nodded in satisfaction and looked at Malahurst. "What about the other legions?" "Preliminary reports indicate that Vespasian's entire company has mutinied and launched an attack on the Emperor's Children warships," Primarch's attendant said, picking up the mandrel in the strategy room and projecting a holographic image of the Istvan galaxy. Horus's gaze swept across the holographic images in the void and the torrent of data rolling around him. The purple-gold warships, spearheaded by the cruiser Andronius, deployed in an assault formation, piercing through the interceptors like arrows. A barrage of bullets rained down on the Emperor's Children fleet, and the Overlord shields were pierced before it could react. The pride of the Emperor was slowly turning, but the Gloriana-class battleships lagging behind the Vespasian fleet could only use a small portion of their starboard firepower to attack. The Emperor's Children's fleet could not stop the Vespasian fleet. They had planned this all along. Vespasian wielded considerable influence within the legion, and Lucius and Taurus were on his side. Not a single one of the Emperor's Children's assault troops obeyed orders. Most of the other assault troops joined the melee, while a few sent inquiries to Fulgrim and Eidolon. Horus stared at a chaotic purple-gold color, with dense battle runes crisscrossing in the void. "Where are the World Eaters?" Most of the raiding teams didn't arrive. Only 25 squads carried out the airdrop mission, Primarch's attendant continued. Eulis Termital, commander of the 4th Company of the Death Guard, led his commando team to carry out orders, but Nathaniel Garo was persuaded by the traitor Tower Wiz. He joined the fleeing fleet, and nearly half of the warships in the 7th Dalien were also incited by him. "Mortarion, Fulgrim, your loyal offspring have all defected. How much better are you than the Angrons?" Acton also defected with the Remembrancers and joined them, and he also publicly accused you of betrayal, Malahurst continued to report. "Damn it, it's all just talk." Ezekiel clenched his fists. Who cares what that old man says? Although Acton Cruz was the company commander of the 3rd Company, he had long fallen out of favor and would tell everyone about his past glories, but his words were ignored by his colleagues. Abaddon believes he should have retired long ago and gone off to chat with new recruits about the past. Horus frowned slightly. His meticulously planned cleanup operation had encountered an unexpected turn of events before it even began. Once Vespasian and Garo have successfully escaped, they will surely report his treason to Terra. Immediately order the fleet to pursue the mutineer fleet. Immediately after the void battle ends, conduct orbital bombardment. As you command, Primarch's attendant replied. His communicator immediately buzzed, and after listening to it, he spoke. "Warmaster is Fulgrim. I'd like to hear his explanation," Horus gestured. "No, I want to see with my own eyes how the proud Phoenix admits the mistake he made." A few seconds later, Malahurst reported, "The hologram is ready." "Warmaster." Fulgrim's figure crackled, and the screen flickered. Even within the same galaxy, the signal was unstable, clearly indicating that the pride of the Emperor had not yet recovered from the sudden barrage of fire. "Fulgrim, you once told me that you could persuade Phoenix to join my plan. You failed. Now, your Emperor's children have all defected, and you've disrupted my plans once again." Fulgrim's face grew paler and paler, and his voice came faintly after several seconds. "This proves that your plan was correct. The rebels must be eliminated." Horus watched as Fulgrim's projection disappeared and shook his head. The proud Phoenix refused to admit his defeat. He was unwilling to tarnish his perfection, so he ran away. Greater than. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.